30 seconds. Seconds. And we're live. Welcome to the City of Foster City Estero Municipal Improvement District regular meeting of Monday, February 5th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Newsom's Executive Order N2920, the meeting will be held by teleconference and/or video conference only. The public may participate by joining the Zoom meeting and submitting their public comments in a live meeting format. Any emails sent to publiccomment@fostercity.org will be provided to the City Council prior to the meeting. Emails received after the start of the meeting will be provided after the meeting. Pursuant to the Ralph M. Brown Act, Government Code Section 54953, all votes shall be by roll call vote due to council members, directors participating by teleconference.
Call the meeting to order, and would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Council members ex officio, Emit directors Richa Wasti.
Here.
John Fruman.
Here.
Sanjay Gahani.
Here.
Sam Hindi.
Here.
And Mayor President Catherine Mahanpour.
Here. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 4, special presentations. 4.1, a proclamation declaring the week of October 4th to 10th, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week.
Thank you. I have asked Councilmember Fruman to present the proclamation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And we do have Fire Marshal is here to accept on behalf of the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department. Fire Prevention Week, October 4 through 10, 2020. Whereas the City of Foster City is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Foster City. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. Home fires killed more than 2,630 people in the United States in 2017, according to the National Fire Protection Association. And fire departments in the United States responded to 357,000 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, and fire departments responded to more than 173,200 calls annually between 2013 and 2017. And whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking, and more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And whereas Foster City residents are encouraged to stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from stovetops. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, serves up fire safety in the kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Now, therefore, I, John Fruman, on behalf of Catherine Mahanpour, Mayor of the City of Foster City, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 4 through 10, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week throughout this community and urge Foster City residents to check their kitchens for fire hazards, use safe cooking practices, and support the many public safety activities and efforts of San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department's Fire and Emergency Services during Fire Prevention Week 2020. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Fire Marshal Marshall, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor Mahanpour, and thank you, Councilmember Fruman, for reading the proclamation. As the resolution states, kitchen fires are number one as far as fires caused in the United States. And that is true in our own local jurisdiction as well, and has been throughout my entire career. A number of times I've seen the tragedy where somebody leaves for what they think is just a minute and they come back to find their kitchen on fire. And sadly, some of those people do get injured by trying to put the fires out the wrong way. And taking a grease fire to a kitchen faucet, for example, is probably one of the number one things. So we have a number of resources on our website that we've put up specially for Fire Prevention Week, both for kids and for adults alike, to learn how to safely cook and how to make sure that this kind of a preventable tragedy doesn't occur in your own home. So we really appreciate the council taking the time to recognize Fire Prevention Week this week for us, and we hope that everybody is safe out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for everything that you've been doing with the fires. It's been a tough year, so we thank you for all your service. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next item, please.
Item 4.2, a presentation from Commute.org regarding the Cut the Commute Pledge.
Thank you. That's Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is John Ford. I'm Executive Director at Commute.org. It's nice to see so many familiar faces, even though it's on Zoom. I wish I was there with you in person tonight. But I'd appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight just briefly about the Cut the Commute Pledge. I'd like to share my screen with just a couple of slides. Fantastic. So what we're looking to do with the Cut the Commute Pledge, it's actually a Bay Area Air Quality Management District Spare the Air program that Commute.org is working in San Mateo County. And what we're really trying to do is encourage employers throughout the Bay Area to continue to take a pledge to continue to provide remote work options for their employees who can work from home post-pandemic. Most people who are working from home now are not doing so because that's what they want to do, but it's because that's the only way that they can be safe. But what we're hoping is that employers will think about it now and try to put into place for the future a commitment that will allow more people to work remotely. Commute.org has taken the pledge ourselves, and we're working with all sites, all types of employers throughout the county, large, small, in all industry types, wherever it makes sense to try to encourage people to continue that work from home. There's a lot of benefits to working remotely and helping those of us who live and work here in San Mateo County. It obviously reduces air pollution, has tremendous impacts on the climate by reducing the amount of GHG that we're expending. The best commute oftentimes we can say is the one where the car never leaves the driveway for those people who have that option. But the more people that have the opportunity to work remotely also means that there's less congestion on the road for those who can't work remotely. So it really works hand in hand by encouraging more people to do it. The pledge is looking for 25%. Right now, a lot of employers are well beyond that, but we know that when the pandemic ends and people start coming back to work, more people will be coming back. But we're looking for that 25%. We really think that'll make a tremendous improvement. A lot of employees who are working remotely now appreciate it. It's a lot less time commuting. It helps with a work-life balance, and we know that that's going to continue. Pre-pandemic, telework accounted for about 4% of the Bay Area's commute. We're hoping to obviously grow that number and take advantage of the opportunity of people doing that behavior now, and hopefully doing it as we go into the future. This is what the pledge looks like. It's up on the Spare the Air website. It can also be found on the commute.org website. Our team of employer representatives that we have at commute.org are working with employers to help them put their policies together, help them learn best practices, train their people on how to be better teleworkers, as well as managing a telework workforce. So we encourage anybody out there in Foster City and in the greater San Mateo County area to contact our team and let us help you figure out how you can take the pledge and continue to do that. But for those who can't, this is our new theme, which is basically wherever you work and however you commute, we're there for you. So as people start to come back to work, we want to make sure that they're doing so safely. If you can continue that telework and do the pledge, that's fabulous. But if you can't, please reach out to us. We're here for them, for you, and for the employers to make sure that we get everybody back to work safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I believe Councilmember Owasti would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Mayor. I represent you all as a board member for Commute.org, and as part of my updates in the last council meeting, I briefly mentioned this pledge, and I think it's a great idea. The key word here is to encourage the employers and also to have the realization and understanding that not all the jobs can be performed remotely. And as John mentioned, that taking this pledge and those who can work from home allows those who can't work from home also some benefits, as he outlined. So thank you, John, for all your efforts with Commute.org. He's our fearless leader. He even wrote an op-ed when we just had started shelter in place, as we talked in one of our Commute.org meetings that this is one of the experiments that we are forced to be in, and to the extent that we can take learnings from this and apply that post-pandemic or post-shelter in place, we can solve one of the biggest problems that our region faces, or attempt to solve. One of the biggest problems our region faces, especially Foster City, as we all know, it's a big pain point. So I think this allows us an opportunity to collaborate with the employers in Foster City. There may be a number of employers, larger employers like Visa and Gilead, who may already be thinking in this direction, encouraging, but then there are so many other employers that with the tools and with guidance may possibly can consider and allow their employees to be able to work remotely. We also heard in our session in Commute.org that not all the employees would like to work from home, even if they can, because they may not have resources, or they find going to work most productive and most effective for them. So hence the word encourage, hence the word, or hence the positioning of making those tools and allowing them to be able to work from home if they so choose. And I really like the tangible component of it, 25%, as John shared. I would encourage our council to take the next steps, which I think employer reach out. One of the ideas suggested in our meeting was collaborating with Chamber of Commerce, as they're already working with businesses, and explore if that could be a possibility to potentially take this pledge. A lot of effort has been put in by Supervisor Canepa and some of the other council members in the region. Thank you again, John, for your leadership in this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions on for Mr. Ford? I don't see any hands. So I will ask our interim city manager, what would be the next step for us if we wanted to encourage our businesses to do this?
So I'd like to come back to City Council probably with a discussion point And if the entire city council agrees, we can definitely work with businesses to take the pledge. I think it's a great idea.
That would be great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Ford, for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 5, public. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items not listed on the agenda. As a reminder, we are taking comments in a live meeting format. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please raise your hand during this time. This is for items not on the agenda. If you would like to speak on the item on the agenda, please wait until that item comes up to provide comment.
Thank you. I'm going to give 10-15 seconds here for people to raise their hand. And if you're on the phone, how do you raise your hand, Rob?
Star 9.
Star 9, sorry.
Sorry, Star 9.
I don't see any hands.
No hands. Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Item 6, City Emit Consent Calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council Emit Board of Directors and will be enacted by one motion unless removed by a member of the council board, staff, or public.
Thank you. I haven't received any requests for anything to be removed, so if nobody has anything to be removed, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Emit Director Wasthi,
Yes.
Fruman,
Yes.
Gahani,
Yes.
Hindi,
Yes.
and Mayor President Mahanpour.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item passes with all council members voting yes.
Next item, please.
7, new business. 7.1, consideration of the development of a code of conduct for Foster City elected and appointed officials, continued from September 8th, 2020.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The Mayor requested to agendize this discussion about whether to consider adopting a council ethics or a council code of conduct. To assist with the discussion, staff has provided some basic information about such codes and provided several samples from other cities. The legal responsibilities of council members are set forth in state and federal law, and those responsibilities are further reinforced through mandatory ethics training. There is no requirement to adopt standards beyond what is required by these laws. If the council does wish to move forward, staff would appreciate specific requests for further information or direction on what those next steps should be. This concludes the staff report.
Thank you. I'm going to give a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds here for somebody to raise their hand if they have any questions from the public. I don't see any raised hands. So comments, questions from the council? Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's past time that we do, as a council, really adopt or at least consider a code of conduct for our council members and committee, commissions, and so forth. What I would like staff to bring back to us, in addition, I think the staff report has a lot of good examples of what's being implemented at some cities that we could, some of it might be applicable to Foster City. But also I would like to have an added component about social media as well. I mean, the role of council members, what would be accepted and inappropriate, if you will, in social media as it relates to issues with other council members or staff or committee members or commissioners and so forth. I think that got to be regulated to a certain extent. The expectation during the meetings, I think it should carry over to social media posts as well. Thank you.
I think that's a really good suggestion. Anybody else have comments or questions? Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the timing is appropriate. The shift in our culture, and as we're trying to preserve what we have here, preparing a code of conduct for us to evaluate, I think is a really good idea. I want to thank Andra for her comments and staff for the staff report. I think from what I read, I believe that we could really pull some really good information from what Belmont, Los Gatos, and Mountain View prepared. Those are the ones that I found to be thorough, and I also agree with Councilmember Hindi about adding to that some guidance on social media.
Thank you. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too believe that this is overdue, long overdue. I don't know how much it would have helped in the past, but I think it's something that clearly we need to look into and adopt. The other thing I think that should be in there, I don't know if it's in one of the examples, is, and I can't remember the proper term, but the telecommuting. When is it appropriate or inappropriate for a council member to telecommute into a meeting? We've seen different types of telecommuting, one from as close as a mile or a mile and a half away. Others are hundreds or thousands of miles away. And when is that really appropriate to do that? And when do we expect members to be present? I think it needs to cover things about when a meeting is in session, where we ought to be and how we ought to be conducting ourselves during that meeting. The one difference I think I'm hearing from what I've heard so far is there's been mention of staff, and we're going to get into a topic very soon, the next item actually on committees. This is absolutely an area where I believe an ad hoc subcommittee of the council and maybe a planning commissioner would be absolutely appropriate. We are potentially preparing a policy for us, and putting staff in the position to have to do that, I don't think is, I think it would be better and more appropriate if we did that. And my suggestion, once we get a chance to hear any other comments, if there are any, is that we consider 2 council members and a planning commissioner to sit down, look at the various samples that we have, especially the ones that Vice Mayor Gahani has already looked at and have said have good substance to them. And maybe staff can help us to cut and paste types of pieces that would at least start a conversation with the public, to let the public weigh in on what they expect of us based on that draft. And based on that input, we can adopt a code of conduct for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think that an ad hoc subcommittee might be really valuable here to try to put something together that we can all agree on. I actually would like to serve on that subcommittee because I have been trying to get this in for 4 years. So I would like to serve if that's what we decide to do. And I do agree that I think we need a social media component on that. I think that's really important. Telecommuting is also a subject that I think probably needs to be discussed, especially after COVID when we're starting to meet in person. So that might be a good discussion. I do agree that Belmont, Los Gatos, and Mountain View seem to have a pretty good handle on codes of conduct. So those are the 3 probably that would be most relevant. So with that, any other comments or questions? Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani.
Could we discuss that proposal a little bit more about the subcommittee, and and can we incorporate that into a motion so that we could just turn it around today?
I think that would be appropriate. Sure.
Do I have council support for that? Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Councilmember Fruman and yourself, Mayor, that it's a good idea to have oversight and contribution from a subcommittee made up of council members. I think the Planning Commission is a good idea as well. And I'm happy to support yourself, Mayor Mahanpour, and Councilmember Fruman as subcommittee members for that. I just wanted to hear from council if they thought that was a good idea, and if so, if they had a recommendation for a planning commissioner.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
I didn't think about the ad hoc, but I don't have any objection if that's the majority of the council wants to go that way. I thought staff would be able to prepare it, but I could see Councilmember Fruman's point, and I'm happy to support it if need be.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions, but do you need a motion from us? It says
that would be helpful. And also if you can identify who the subcommittee would be, and I'm assuming that you want the planning commission to select a person, or maybe you can give us some direction on that as well.
Councilmember Fruman?
I think I'm prepared to make a motion, but I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and put out a name on a planning commissioner that I would recommend. And it's based on the experience as a planning commissioner, the experience as a city council member, the experience as a city staff member, that Rick Wyckoff would probably be a perfect choice for this. He's seen it from all aspects. He's going to be involved. Well, any planning commissioner would be, but I think he's the most well-rounded of the planning commissioners. I think he would be a wise choice.
And do we have a motion?
Is there, I don't know if Vice Mayor Gahani wanted to discuss that option first.
I'm fine with, I just wanted to bring it up and see if we could move the ball forward. And I think you have. I'm fine with it.
All right, then I'll go ahead and make a motion that we form a subcommittee of Mayor Mahanpour, myself, and Commissioner Wyckoff to prepare a draft code of conduct for the city council and council appointees to be brought before council and the public for input.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Do I have?
I'm sorry, before that, clarification, that's an ad hoc subcommittee, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Ad hoc. Yes. I have a motion and second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Awasthi?
Yes.
Fruman?
Yes.
Gahani?
Yes.
Hindi?
Yes.
And Mayor Mahanpour?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes with all council members voting yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go on to the next item, please.
7.2, discussion on committee protocols, continued from September 8th, 2020. Anyone who wants to provide public comment, please raise your hand during this time. After the staff report is presented, we will call on you to speak.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Good evening once again, Mayor and members of the City Council. The City Council has begun to regularly establish and rely on the recommendations of subcommittees. Currently there are 11, although it sounds like you just made the 12th. Of which some have taken an active ongoing policy role, while others have served a specific and limited purpose and have not continued to meet regularly. Because the Brown Act applies to standing committees of a legislative body, which have a continuing subject matter jurisdiction, several subcommittees may now fit the definition of a standing committee. Staff recommends that the subcommittees be tasked with determining whether they have concluded their business and can be discontinued, or if they have a long-term mission and should be categorized as a standing committee, in which case they should develop a regular meeting schedule and a mission statement. Based on council direction, staff can compile the responses from the subcommittees and bring this item back to the City Council for review and final action at a future meeting. This concludes the staff report.
Thank you. I'm going to give a few seconds here for anybody from the public to raise their hand. I don't see any raised hands. So comments or questions from the council? Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani.
I'm happy with the staff report and the recommendations that have been made in there with regards to our subcommittees.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions or Comments? Yes, Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you. The subcommittee topic has been of interest to me while I was campaigning and got input from some community members. I think there is some concern on the part of some community members that work is being done outside of public view. And I believe that having these meetings noticed and open to the public and reporting more fully at our meetings, I think will help. I think that Dante and the mayor bringing it as an agenda item every meeting is helpful. The concern I have and the fact that this has been on our agenda for the last 2 or 3 meetings provides proof for me that some of these subcommittees maybe have worked through what they need to work through and don't need to be standing subcommittees anymore. Usually that's evident by we haven't met, we have no report over and over again. And that has nothing to do with the members. That has nothing to do with the topic. It just has to do with the fact that that topic is not one that comes up so regularly that we really need a standing subcommittee. We still maintain the opportunity to do ad hoc subcommittees, just like we just did. Form a group, solve a task, disband the committee, move on. We always have that option to do that. The one thing I would encourage my colleagues to think about is not to think so much about the name of the committee that we're talking about and trying to decide whether we should have it or not because it sounds so important. Think about how often you've met, how substantive the agendas have been, and we've been able to survive without those meetings. So is that a good reason maybe to set some of these aside? I had asked staff, I don't know, it may have gotten lost in a list about when the last substantive meetings were for each of these subcommittees. And I don't know the answers to all those. There are some of these committees, I came on the council in April. Some of these committees, as far as I know, have not met since then. So that would be a good indication for me that they may not be needed. The other thing that I think is critically important to think about is over the last several months, last year or so, our community has been reaching out and expressing an interest in being more involved and being heard. And during that time, and maybe a little bit before that, the city council has disbanded several citizen advisory committees for various reasons. And that kind of contradicts what the community's been asking for. And I would like our council to consider the idea that communications and public engagement, that subcommittee is designed to provide information to the public. Why wouldn't we have the public or members of the public involved there to help guide what they're looking for? They know better than we do because we have the information, we know the information, and they may not. And so having that input to understand what they're looking for might indicate that communications and public engagement might be a good citizen advisory committee to start as opposed to a subcommittee of the council. And obviously we would have a liaison anyway. Those are my comments. I believe that unless there's disagreement here tonight, staff has recommended two subcommittees currently. Long-term strategic plan and information exchange be disbanded. They've completed their mission. Obviously, the last one, there's special events, and Councilmember Wastley and I are still completing our work regarding the special event fees and study. So I'm satisfied. If I'd be interested in hearing from the council members that are assigned to long-term strategic planning and information exchange to see if there's disagreement or maybe more information that I should be considering. I'm ready to go ahead and recommend disbanding those tonight, unless I hear different from my colleagues.
Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on the long-term strategic planning, I think it's a very important thing for us to discuss and work on. However, I think we could probably do without it, if you will. And as long as we have our strategic meeting in January and we discuss issues of importance, and perhaps at that point we could task couple members of the council on an ad hoc committee if we see the need arises during that year. But I think it's a very important topic for us to really consider and discuss, and we shouldn't be waiting. If we don't plan long-term, we're really gonna be caught by surprise more often than not. And I don't think that's a wise thing to do. But given the frequency of how many times we've met, I think we could substitute it by making it a standing item on the agenda for our visioning meeting on January. And then based on that discussion, we could task a ad hoc subcommittee on that. As far as the other committee, the exchange, unfortunately, we have not met. And I think it probably is redundant to the other information subcommittee. And I have to tell you, from me, just so everyone is aware, the reason I approved that at the time last year when I was mayor, because there was at the time a lot of misinformation coming in when we felt the need, in addition to the regular communication that we have from the communication subcommittee, that we needed a source from the city to provide accurate information rather than what was being, shared in the public sphere, if you will. And for Council Member Fruman's suggestion, I see your point as far as having a member of the public on it, but I question, it's important obviously to get the public input on what kind of information they want, but I question whether one person or two people on the committee are able to provide us that feedback that we need more than the email that we receive from the public on any item. The public is not, from what I have seen, public is not shy to share with us what they feel, especially with an item that are of importance to them. I think that's where it comes, say, for example, on Parks and Rec issues. That's where you have the committee, the Park and Rec committee, that's your ambassadors to the community. They are supposed to be the one who are soliciting feedback and talking to the public and coming back to council with recommendation. And probably the same would apply to the youth subcommittee and so forth. So, your point is well taken, that there's a value obviously for public input and what the public needs. But I question whether we'll be able to accomplish that with one or two people on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a tendency to agree with Councilmember Hindi on that. Those three that are being recommended to be disbanded, I have no problem, no issues with those. We could always come up with an ad hoc committee as things come up that we need to take care of. So, Vice Mayor Gahani, did you have?
I think, sorry, Mayor, I'll give my time to Councilmember Awasthi. She raised her hand before.
I didn't see her.
No, it's okay. No worries.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with staff's recommendation. One of the reasons, as I had mentioned in the previous council meeting also, it takes a lot of staff's time, and also agree with Councilmember Fruman that as this item has been added to the agenda, not because council members are not working or not because of anyone's fault, we have not seen meetings. So those two reasons, more importantly, staff's time, it takes, from what I understand, for a 1 hour meeting, 2 to 3 hours or more of preparation. So I'm in support of that. However, I want to mention the importance of long-term planning, and especially as we come out of pandemic and COVID, it's extremely important to not lose sight of that. And I agree, if there is a need, we can always form an ad hoc subcommittee, but if there is a way we could keep that on the radar, I think it warrants discussion whether it's a small agenda item. No agenda item can be small, but whether if it's as simple as having an agenda item, or whenever is the right time forming an ad hoc subcommittee. That's very important. And not part of that, but it's, and I have raised this several times, also important is to keep an eye on proactively the upcoming bills. And that could be not exactly long-term planning, but that plays a key role in our long-term planning and how our vision and how we see the future of Foster City. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
And so, Mayor, just a comment from staff, and we can definitely craft this any way the council wants. But the other side of that, I think you can argue that we should be looking long-term for all of the committees. There's kind of an immediate issues that we need to address with land use, but it should not just stop there. We should be looking 30 years, 20 years. Same thing with infrastructure. We got stuff to all of these essentially can look short, medium, and long term. And then that begs the question, then why do you need a separate subcommittee to talk about long-term planning if you're doing long-term planning with all of the other subcommittees? Just something to think about. We can definitely, whatever council directs and wants to do, but I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Dante, that we need to look at all of these as being long-term. So, Vice Mayor Gahoni?
I kind of see long-term strategic planning as the umbrella, and then all these different subcommittees fall underneath that, and they should be tied to a long-term strategy. If we are doing long-term planning month over month, we're not doing it right. We should really have a long-term strategy, get that plan in place, and then roll it out so that each of these subcommittees that we move forward with are tied into that long-term strategy. So as Councilmember Hindi was saying about having, a session in January, let's say, where we start thinking about, medium, long-term planning, and then, develop the, have the right subcommittees in place there to support that long-term strategy. And so we kind of want to definitely put the horse before the cart there and have a plan in place, and then put the work in place to bring things to council. Perfect example of this working, right, was the post-PMR agreement at Foster's Landing, right? All of us are responsible for that decision. All of us had access to all of the information, but by allowing the Economic Development and Sustainability Subcommittee to do some of the legwork along with staff, it allowed us, and bring that information back periodically to council and keep you up to date of the progress. It allowed us to progress well there. So I do see a benefit in the subcommittees that have been recommended for being maintained. Again, I go back to my initial comment. I do agree with the staff's recommendation. To Councilmember Fruman, while I see the value in your point of having community engagement at the subcommittee level, I'd really like to see enhanced community engagement across all areas, all these areas. And so it's important for us individually as council members and along with staff to really get the important messages out to the community in a timely fashion, and then request engagement so that we can all be marching in step together as these issues are coming up to us, don't catch anybody off guard. But some of the things that happen at the subcommittee level, alignment to a long-range agenda, operational discussions, those are elements that are really important at the subcommittee level that may not, as you really get into the weeds with the community. I think getting that input is super important, but I'm not sure if it's at the subcommittee level.
Thank you. I think that the standing committees, because it's going to be noticed, public will be able to attend those meetings. So as they have issues or something, they will be attending those meetings and they'll be publicly noticed. Anything they want to attend, they can be there to express their opinions. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see the value in having members of the public be a member of a liaison committee. I think that the subcommittees, since we're going to be properly noticed to the public, they will have notice, and if they want to attend, they can. So, yes, Councilmember Fruman.
I hear what everybody's saying, and I get it. I just wanted to clarify what my recommendation was. It was not my recommendation to have 2 community members with 2 council members. The idea was, just like the Park and Rec or the Planning Commission, we select 5 community members. We have a liaison from staff and from the council, and they would help to guide that public outreach in the sense of what types of, we're guessing at what type of information we want to get out to people for like the levee project. Well, you have a committee of residents who are living through the situation, could provide some of that input. And I get what Vice Mayor Gahani's talking about, that some of the things that are discussed in that subcommittee are operational level things that maybe don't necessarily need, or maybe it's the input from the community guides what they're talking about. It was just that was my thought. I just didn't want to be confused. I'm hearing what people are saying, and I appreciate the input. Thank you.
So I think we're all supportive of the staff's recommendation. Am I reading the audience correctly?
With the exception of the long-term strategic plan.
Well, the long-term strategic planning, I thought we were going to have that as a standing subject at the yearly meeting. And then with each subcommittee, we are going to be talking about long, medium, and short-term planning.
Right. So if that's the case, was that your comment, Vice Mayor, to just talk about long-term strategic planning during once a year and not have a subcommittee? Is that your understanding or your suggestion?
No, thanks for asking the question, City Manager Hall. What I was saying is if we're doing this over and over for long-term strategic planning, we're probably not doing it right. Right. So, we should, take the time that it takes collectively, bring it into council, have it as an agenda item until we have that knocked out, and, have the meeting in January. If we need to have another special meeting, let's have it. Let's focus on it until we're in agreement. This is our, long-term strategy, midterm strategy. How does the short-term strategy tie into the midterm and the long-term? But I agree with the recommendations from staff in this report.
Great. Then it sounds like we're in agreement. Thank you.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion and move to accept the report and recommendations provided in the staff report.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Awasthi?
Yes.
Fruman?
Yes.
Gahani?
Yes.
Hindi?
Yes.
And Mayor Mahampur?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes with all council members voting yes.
Thank you. And thank you for the discussion. It was very valuable for me. Thank you. Next item, please.
Okay, item 7.3, discussion on proposed resolution for amendment of section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996 to require social media companies to remove materials that promote criminal activities. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please raise your hand during this time. After the staff report is presented, we will call on you to speak.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. So for your review and discussion tonight is a proposed resolution being considered at the League of California Cities annual conference. At the business meeting is this coming Friday, October 9th. It is regarding an amendment of section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, otherwise known as CDA, of 1996 to require social media companies to remove materials that promote criminal activities. So if passed at the meeting, the League would then go on to urge Congress to amend section 230 of the federal CDA to limit the immunity that's provided to online platforms where their forums arguably enable criminal activity to be promoted. Ultimately, the policy objectives proposed under the resolution, if enacted, would incentivize social media companies to establish and implement a reasonable program to identify and remove content that solicits criminal activity. Within the staff report, we summarize what is the League's perspective on this item, and I thought it would be good to bring that to your attention. So there are some concerns that were raised around the censorship of online content. There are constitutional issues regarding legal or illegal speech and the role of government in determining this. So essentially, First Amendment free rights governing free speech. And secondly, if requiring online platforms to provide law enforcement with information, if this would then turn them into government actors violating Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable searches and seizures. Overall, it's a challenging issue. It touches upon the impact of social media in the society and the role that technology plays in monitoring and managing that content. Shared with all the council members right before tonight's meeting was an outline of the recommended action or action that's been taken by cities in San Mateo County. To date, only a handful of our neighbors have considered this item at a public meeting. Cities of Millbrae and Pacifica are in support of the resolution. City of South San Francisco had no firm consensus. They raised similar concerns that were outlined by the league. And alongside Foster City, the City of San Mateo is considering this item at their meeting tonight, and the town of Atherton is this coming Wednesday. Mayor Mahanapur is the designated voting delegate at the business meeting, and so this item is before the council today to allow an opportunity for discussion in order for us to determine Foster City's position so that the mayor can vote accordingly. That would conclude my staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So yes, I brought this before us because I think it's an interesting conversation that we need to have about social media and the First Amendment, freedom of speech. So I'm interested in hearing everybody's comments on this because I am kind of vacillating between yes and no. So I would like to get everybody's opinion on this. Anybody want to start?
Well,
yes, Councilmember Hindi.
So, I mean, obviously, I don't want to be a person who is opposing freedom of speech, but in my personal belief, there is a limit to the First Amendment when it becomes a speech of hate, a speech of instigating violence, a speech of racism. I mean, I don't know. I don't have information enough. Obviously, when you go to the meeting, Mayor, you're going to be hearing a little bit more of a presentation and people speaking for and against. I honestly don't have enough on it, but like Jennifer has said, it's not an easy one. No, do you want to continue? You want to have social media companies being the police on what to be published and what not to be, or posted and not to be posted. But at the same time, do you want to see violent speech being there, or do you want to see hate speech and that kind of stuff, you know? So I don't know. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one because I look at it from a different layer actually, because you have to look at the liability too. How are they going to determine that it's a criminal act? Who is going to make that determination? Will companies have to hire a legal expert on criminal activity in order to determine what might be considered criminal activity? If you say one word, does it make it criminal activity? To me, it's putting the onus on a social media company to do that. They need experts to more or less tell them what might be criminal activity or what should be censored and what shouldn't be. So I was looking at it through that lens, but I also don't want to suppress freedom of speech. So to me, I'm in the middle. It's an interesting subject, and I look at it from a liability standpoint. So if something does happen and they take something down and a city or a company gets sued because they took it down and they find out that you can't take it down because it didn't meet the standards, then you're in a liable situation. Yes, Councilmember Wasti.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I purely look at this in terms of policy, I see the issues in not having enough objectivity to be able to implement it. And those are kind of the reasons, Mayor, you mentioned. How can we set up the guidelines and the rules, if you will, that will be followed to be able to enforce this policy? So I think that a good policy should also have a way to be able to be implemented seamlessly. For this particular topic, I know it's extremely important. Their social media and the unintended consequences of freedom of speech via social media has generated so much problems that we face today, especially in the political world. It is extremely important, and it's great that it's being looked at, but I think it has to be a two-step process. I think maybe the first step would be to provide guidelines and go from the standpoint of providing encouragement versus having a policy right from the get-go. And perhaps the second phase or the second step could be having a policy, but removing the subjectivity somehow from it. I know Councilmember Fruman and I have been working on another topic, which I'll not discuss at all, but very similar. Like we were trying to make that policy as objective as possible. And that is the sign of a successful policy. In this case, I see a lot of gaps that will not result in a really good policy that it is intended to be.
Yeah, I have the same concern. It's the implementation of it. Can they set guidelines that are going to be easy to follow and be objective and not subjective? So I have a concern on enforcement and implementation. So that's why I think it's going to be a liability issue for the companies and cities. I mean, what if we put some information out there and somebody gets into social media on our website and says something or incites riots or something like that? So I'm wondering, there are some nice questions here at the end of our staff report. And what should the role of the league be in engaging in issues relating to someone's privacy? So do you think this goes too far? Yes, Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you. I appreciate the input that's been given so far. I think that an objective standard is important so that the social media companies understand clearly what they're looking for. Freedom of speech is not unlimited. There are limitations on freedom of speech, and that's already been proven and addressed. It's already a criminal act to aid and abet in criminal activity and conspiracy to engage in criminal activity. And so if you're online and using social media to conspire to commit a criminal act, there's laws that prohibit that. And should they be allowed to use a social media site to accomplish that? The hard part is language. You know, I mean, I remember as working as a police officer, it's a crime to threaten a police officer. And I had a guy say, "I'm going to take you out." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to take you out to dinner," because he knew what the line was. So you got to be very careful about what is said and where the line gets crossed. But the cost, Madam Mayor, you had mentioned the potential for needing legal counsel or legal subject matter experts on their staff. I believe these companies all have that already. It's a great retirement spot for local law enforcement officers who have done investigations and administration. So I think they have that. These social media sites are already censoring what they believe isn't factual information, which could be an infringement on freedom of speech. Nothing says that your speech has to be accurate. But I think that if there are some clear guidelines that are presented that a reasonable person should be able to understand what is and what isn't speech that supports, I can't remember the exact wording that they're using here, that promotes criminal activity. I think promoting would be a difficult one. You know, I mean, let's go incite a riot at this location. For me, may not be enough, because you have a right to go someplace and assemble. And if they go and they assemble and it's peaceful, it's not a violation. Let's meet here to break into and loot these stores. There was an example, I think, in the staff report or that was used here about gathering people to go to a mall. I want to say it was in Southern California to loot the mall. And the advantage for law enforcement is if law enforcement is paying attention, they can get there and prevent it. It's because they're putting it out on social media. But that, I would say, is allowing people to engage in criminal activity or the conspiring to commit criminal activity on a social website. And I think those things, we shouldn't allow that. It's contrary to law and order in our communities. It protects our community. But I would agree that the first thing is an objective standard that could be followed by some regulation.
Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani. You're on mute.
Papa got me this time. I had a question for Councilmember Fruman. Someone wants to go and engage in a criminal activity, and then at the last second opts not to. Have they done anything wrong?
It depends on what they've done. So
let's say they're online. So let me tighten it up a little bit. That's a great point. So let's say someone goes online and says, hey, you know what? Like the example that was given to us, I think it was the mall in Cerritos, right? I think that's what was given to us. That was one of the examples that was given, and said, hey, let's go loot it. You know, and I'm really frustrated. Let's go loot it. But then that day I decide to go get a boba and hang out. And I'm not going to go do that. Have I committed a crime?
No, and the situation here where I think it's important to look at what we're talking about really is what we're talking about. The recommendation is ensuring that the social media host removes or does not allow those posts. It's not about going and arresting that person for making the post. It's stopping the social media outlet from allowing that post to be maintained there to potentially further that criminal act, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you do understand it correctly. That's the way, at least that's the way I understand it. And even if I'm supporting it, do I have a right to say that? That's what I was challenged with. Like, you know, when I was looking at this, I'm more interested in enabling law enforcement to evaluate a crime that's occurred by using technology to be able, because once you got something out on the internet, it's out forever. It's there, you know? And so when you go and investigate a crime that's occurred and say, okay, who could have been possibly involved in this? And you go and see that information, to me, that investigation after a crime has occurred and leveraging technology for that is much more valid to me than someone who's promoting it. I think that was the challenge I had with it. So I was hoping maybe you could help me with that. But that's what I had coming into the meeting today.
I think there's two pieces there. One is the requirement, and I can't remember if it was in this or not, the requirement for these social media sites to provide those posts to law enforcement. I think would be, I don't see the problem with that. You know, if people are talking about privacy issues, then don't post it in a public environment. Okay. I see no problem with requiring these social media sites to give that to law enforcement. It's public, in my opinion. Regarding the other portion of it, I think the goal really is to take away this easy tool to promote and plan criminal activity. Before social media, people would have to get together. You have to call each other, you'd have to meet, you have to figure things out. Here, you can get to a wider range of people in a very easy way to plan something bigger, whether it's as big as terrorist activity or as simple as a home invasion, and as simple as, I mean, it's a serious crime, but it's a small one compared to terrorism. You can do that pretty easily on social media by at least getting people together. And maybe you don't plan the whole thing there. And the whole idea here is prevention. You know, it's great to be able to use it after the fact, but I think law enforcement and this initiative is really trying to prevent that crime from occurring in the first place. And aren't we all better off if we prevent it?
So I think that my concern, like I said, was implementation and providing guidelines, how we're going to enforce it. So I really want to get people's input as to how we should position ourselves on this. It sounds like we have concerns on both sides, but yes, Councilmember Hindi, did you have a question? Or you're on mute.
I said, go ahead, finish. I'll wait till you're done. I thought you were done.
Yeah, I just have real concerns about implementation and enforcement and having objective standards that can actually be followed as guidelines for these social media companies. Because I think without those, it could really get out of hand. And those are my concerns. So, Councilmember Hindi, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, I think you just said it. I just wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page. The enforcement and the guidelines for the social media companies, not to the cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, maybe if those are the concerns, I think it might be wise to find out if we have a consensus of the council that if those other pieces are in place, objective standards, how to properly enforce this are determined, are we supportive of this type of activity or regulation, basically? And then if that's the case, then maybe as our representative, you would voice that to the league, that we feel that this is an appropriate thing to do, to regulate, if these pieces are in place. Objective standards, proper enforcement, a proper assignment of responsibility, those types of things are covered, we can support it. Mm-hmm. If that's the voice of the council.
And we could also, Dante, we can also prepare a letter that states that as well. So we would have that in the record, you know, as a written evidence. If everybody, Jen, did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify too for you, Mayor Mahanapour. So when you attend a meeting there, within the resolution packet, they outline all the actions that you can take. So if you don't feel that Foster City has expressed or has enough information to make a decision one way or the other, whether it's to approve the resolution or not approve the resolution, you don't have to take action. There's that option as well. Some cities throughout California have already indicated that that's what they're going to do because there's just not enough. They want those objective standards that you all mentioned. I think they all had the same discussion that you had here tonight. So that is an option. There are even more options beyond that. If there are specific recommendations that you want the resolution to have, you can have them approved but amend it and then bring it back. That's all outlined within the resolution packet.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Fruman.
Madam Mayor, I believe that by not taking any action, that the first one that Jennifer mentioned, I don't think does any service to what's trying to be done. I think that our best route, our best way to go is to explain what are those reservations and what types of things can be done to answer those concerns before moving forward. Then at least it gives the league and the other communities some guidance as to where to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm probably not in favor of taking no action, but I want to see what everybody else thinks. Councilmember Hindi?
Yeah, so I think I started by saying, I don't have enough information on it, and that's really where I am now. And I also mentioned that perhaps you would hear more and enough to satisfy you, because you're going to end up having to make that decision. Clearly, now all 5 of us do not have enough information, I think, from the questions or from the discussion that we have had, or we have questions actually about it, right, and how it's going to be. And I'll give you one more. What would be the appeal process? So social media would decide to take a post down, and well, they view it as inciting criminal act, or they planning criminal act, but in reality it is not. What's the appeal process? So I don't see anything wrong with taking no action if you don't have enough information. So I don't want, for me at least, I'll share my opinion, I don't think just not taking action. If I don't have enough information, I'd rather not take action than take action when I'm not really clear as how things will be handled.
Okay, good point. So how do the others feel about that? Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani?
I think going into that meeting and saying that, if we do have objective standards that go along with this, as well as a method of, policing it, having a feedback loop, that's something that, we would need to amend with that current resolution, because I didn't see any of that in there.
Yeah, I didn't either.
So just saying yes, I see where the dilemma is, because you can't just say yes. We're not just saying no. We're kind of saying yes with reservations. And these are the issues that we'd like to see addressed for us to feel more comfortable to support. If I understood Councilmember Hindi and Councilmember Fruman and Councilmember Alisty.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I have enough information to go on. We'll see what I get when I'm there. If they provide some more information, then it might be helpful if they do come up with some kind of objective standards and implementation, enforcement, and all of that. So we will. I'll go with this. This was very helpful, and I really appreciate everybody speaking up and giving your opinion. Thank you so much. Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
Mayor, I just want to thank you for bringing this item for our consideration. I really appreciate that. You were not under any obligation to bring it, so I appreciate you bringing it to council.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to have it. It was a good discussion. I appreciate it. Thank you. And with that, then we'll move on with the next item.
Did you want to take a motion on this?
Well, it says by minute provide policy direction. I think our motion would be, I think Vice Mayor Gahani probably said it best, was to amend it. We would want to amend the resolution to provide some kind of guidelines and objective standards for implementation and enforcement.
I think if you want to amend it, you might want to have to be specific as to what is it what those standards are. Otherwise,
and we don't have enough information for that.
Yeah, so. Exactly. So I think that's a dilemma, right?
Right.
But if you were to amend the resolution, you want to be able to have some specific as what is it you want to see, not just by saying we would like to see some language or we need to suggest something. In my view, at least, staff could correct me if I'm mistaken.
I think if we let them know that we're looking for objective standards, then I think it would give the league enough information to go back if they don't have enough to pass it now, with councils having the same thoughts that we're having, that they would go back and they would look at those objective standards, try to put that together, and then maybe come back and take another run at it.
Well, that makes sense. Understood. I thought it was for them to take action at the meeting and leave that undefined. That's why I'm suggesting that we'll have it well defined if you're expecting action during that League of Cities meeting.
I think they are, yes. They're expecting some action. Yes.
If they don't have objective standards, we don't have clear methods of policing it, nor a feedback loop, the answer is we don't support it.
Right.
Without those items.
Right. Exactly.
If I understood.
I'm getting, yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hindi, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, given what I know, I can't really be one way or another 100%, but I would gonna have to trust the judgment of the mayor.
Okay, so I'll see what I gather, but I'm not sure that there's a motion that we can make right now because at the meeting, I might have some information that they do have objective standards and they know about it, how to implement it and enforce it. And if I find that out, then yes, our vote would probably be yes. If they don't have any objective standards or implementation plans or enforcement plans, then we can't support it. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's what I'll go out with.
Mayor Mahanapur, sorry, just one last thought on that too. If you do want to refer that they amend the resolution, you can say that and then also disapprove the resolution. So
Okay.
Disapproving with the caveat that they would go back and amend it.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item, please. And thank you for the conversation. Much appreciated.
Item 8, reports. 8.1, report from closed session. Dates are September 21st, 2020, September 28th, 2020, and October 1st, 2020.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Closed sessions were held. It was actually on the 17th, not 21st, September 28th and October 1st. There's no reportable action from any of those sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 8.2, report from the County of San Mateo County on the SMC Recovery Initiative.
Staff report, or there's a presentation.
Yes, Mayor, I have just a couple of words to say before the presentation. At one of the recent meetings with the San Mateo County City Managers, we received a brief presentation of the SMC Recovery Initiative, talking about ways that the county can use its collective capacity to help segments of our community and our county recover from COVID. Our city's done a great job in helping the various segments of our community get through the medical emergency. We are also part of this collaborative, and Mayor Mahanpur is the appointed representative to the initiative. And so the mayor and I wanted the council to also hear about the recovery strategies. And tonight, the county will provide us with a brief update. We have Peggy Jensen, who's the deputy county manager, Jessica Stanfield Mullen, who is the program manager of the Office of Sustainability, Danielle Lee, who is the assistant director of Office of Sustainability, and also I understand that Mike Callaghy, the county manager, may be on the line also. So I will turn it over to you, Peggy Jensen. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, City Manager Hall. We're very pleased to be here and we very much appreciate the invitation. Danielle and Jessica and I are going to take turns doing the presentation, and I'll turn it over to Jessica to start. If we could have the first slide, please.
Sorry, I'm just loading up the PowerPoint right now.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Peggy. So as Peggy and Dante mentioned, the San Mateo County Recovery Initiative is a countywide community collaboration to promote inclusive recovery and leverage the collective capacity of the whole community to build a more equitable, healthy, and connected San Mateo County, not only through this pandemic, but also post-COVID pandemic. The Recovery Initiative is really focused on 4 guiding principles. The first of which is public health, looking at ways to really reduce the spread, as well as support effective community members, making sure that they have access to public health, as well as guidance on the public health, guidance for how to slow the spread of COVID and stay safe and healthy during this time. The second guiding principle is equity, really trying to address current and past inequities through the recoveries work plan and implementation plan. The third is collaboration, Identifying a successful recovery really depends on countywide collaboration with all of our jurisdictions, community partners, large and small businesses, and nonprofits and CBOs. And then lastly, fiscal responsibility. Looking at ways to really invest our limited resources, use them wisely, and leverage when possible to have the most return on our investment. We had 168 community partners, residents, elected officials, and large and small businesses involved in the initiative, working to identify strategies and solutions for the work plan. So how did we engage the community throughout this process? In creating a work plan for the recovery initiative, the county partnered with the community in April to develop a strategic plan, conducting community-wide workshops and interviewing our community leaders to identify those key focus areas to invest resources and develop strategies to address the impacts of the pandemic. Upon completion of the strategic plan, the county convened over 150 community members to participate in 5 committees to draft a work plan, followed by convening our working groups and stakeholders to review and prioritize the recommendations and strategies. This month, we have begun implementing the strategies in the work plan and also working with our key community partners and agencies to identify resources, funding, and next steps. One of the foundational principles of this effort is to really advance equity. We convened an equity work group throughout this process, and the first step was to develop an equity guiding statement that was shared with all the committees as they began looking at potential recovery strategies. The equity group also developed a series of questions to apply through an equity lens to the recovery programs and proposals. And through this equity framework, it's really focused on 4 key areas. Looking at the decision-making and solutions. Who is sitting at the decision-making table? Are there systematic barriers to participation? Whose perspectives and interests are being represented? Second area is really understanding the data. What do the various data tell us about the need for the proposed initiative? Specifically looking at considering race, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, income, languages spoken, ability, age, and as well as the neighborhood. Third area is really looking at burdens and benefits. Who would benefit or burden from the proposed initiative? Looking at whether low-income households or communities of colors experience a disproportionate burden, and then what inequity is being addressed. And the fourth area is accountability, communication, and community engagement. How will we be accountable to and communicate with the community throughout the process? How do we engage those who are not often represented in the decision-making process or those most affected by inequities? When we began to look at developing the recommendations for the work plan, we really wanted to look at key indicators to identify where the need is and who in particular is being impacted by the pandemic. So we know that 65% of the COVID positive cases are residents of color or ethnic minorities. Additionally, over 10,000 immigrants have received $1,000 in financial assistance through our immigrant funds. We know that we have a 250% increase in food distribution by second harvest. Additionally, over 600 of our small businesses have applied for financial assistance during this time. We also know that over 4,400 school children lack Wi-Fi or technology tools to really thrive in a distant learning environment. And lastly, over 20,000 of our low-income workers have lost their jobs. So when we convened our 5 committee areas, we really looked at where could we really invest most in our recommendations. And when we put together the work plan, we have over 125 recommendations really focused on 8 key areas, looking at improving infrastructure related to public and active transportation and addressing the digital divide, supporting our vulnerable populations by meeting essential needs such as food and housing, as well as providing mental health access and services, promoting our economic development by providing support to businesses, nonprofits, and workforce development, and then ensuring quality, affordable childcare and out-of-school care. And the overarching focus for the work plan is really looking at how do we slow the spread of COVID-19 by providing public health support, healthcare access, communications, and testing for COVID. And in determining our implementation and our path to recovery, we know that sort of three key stages have emerged. The first of which is how do we address those critical and immediate needs? During this pandemic and time, we know that a lot of residents required a lot of services, really sort of standing up short-term services so that they were able to have access to food, shelter, as well as healthcare. The second phase is really looking at how do we create community capacity and consumer confidence, making sure that once we do sort of emerge into a midterm recovery, building up consumer confidence and taking public transit, as well as frequenting and shopping at our local small businesses and restaurants. And then lastly, as we go into our long-term recovery, how do we build for a better future so that we can all thrive going forward? And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Danielle Lee, to talk about our timeline for our recovery. Danielle?
Thanks, Jessica, and good evening, everyone. I guess I would like to start out by saying that our timeline for recovery and our path for recovery is not going to be a linear path. We know that our initial response is really focused on critical immediate needs. The county has invested $50 million and cities and private funds have been leveraged to really dive right in and meet those immediate needs. As you can see, it's not a smooth curve. We know that there was an initial spike, but we anticipate that we're not kind of out of the woods yet, and that there will be additional spikes in need over time. But we also know that we have to think about the midterm recovery. Jessica, can you advance that? Yeah, thank you. This is where we try to think about creating community capacity and building that consumer confidence. How do we transition towards the longer term? And then finally, how will we build our better future? What do the long-term recovery strategies look like that will help get us to not only, reopening, but actually a community that was better than it was pre-pandemic? If we can go to the next slide. We've tried to think about our recommendations. I think it was mentioned by Jessica that there are over 125 of them. And so we've tried to think of them in this temporal kind of organization framework so that we can think of, what is that immediate response? How does that transition to the midterm recovery? And then ultimately, how do we get to a long-term better future? And I guess I would also want to acknowledge that pre-COVID, we know that there were inequities, that there were challenges that community members faced. And so we just wanted to also acknowledge that, before COVID, there was work around public health preparedness, but there were also health disparities that existed amongst our communities. Housing was expensive and options were limited, very similarly for childcare. And then, connectivity, the digital divide existed. It may not have had as, acute an effect on everyone. Now that all of our services, or so many of our services, are online, that digital divide is felt very strongly. And then finally, within, the economic recovery sphere, yes, we had very low unemployment. However, there were gaps, both for some small businesses as well as for some portions of the workforce. Not everybody was experiencing the robust economy that the county had overall. If we think about our immediate response, if you can go advance the slide, Jessica, thanks. We know that the health response was to issue a shelter in place. In terms of housing, immediate rental assistance and eviction protections were put into place. Within childcare, local grants and federal loans were available to providers just to be able to have them stay in business. In terms of the digital divide, hotspots and laptops were provided to community members who didn't have connectivity. The school districts did a lot of work especially this fall, to be able to open up distance learning that was able to serve all students. And then in terms of small businesses, similarly to childcare, local grants and federal loans were available. And, we see the sort of dotted line here. That's, we're sort of straddling right now between the emergency response and the midterm recovery, and starting to think about those long-term recovery measures. In terms of the midterm, for the COVID response, we've been now working to provide support for individuals and their families who are COVID positive, as well as we'll be embarking on some mental health outreach as the toll of the pandemic increases over time. In terms of housing, there is support for rent and lease negotiation, as well as small property owner assistance. Some of those longer term strategies or midterm strategies we're starting to engage in. For childcare, we're starting to look at technical assistance for providers, and as well as additional financial assistance for some of them. So how can they operate in the pandemic with the changing health orders, our changing tier status? We're trying to support some of the providers navigate that difficult process. In terms of Wi-Fi connectivity, we're looking at expanding out the Wi-Fi that's provided at the neighborhood level. Are there strategies that we can pilot that demonstrate the value of a countywide Wi-Fi availability, but maybe serve small clusters in neighborhoods of highest need? And then for the economic recovery, we are providing business support, as well as moving towards launching job training and other support for the workforce. And then finally, for that long-term vision, what we are aiming for in terms of the COVID response is really a healthy reopening and greater health equity across our community. In housing, we are looking for affordable housing that meets the needs of the community. Similarly for childcare, quality and affordable childcare that's accessible to the whole community. In terms of the digital divide, we are aiming for quality internet for all residents. And then finally, in terms of the economic recovery, a robust economy with low unemployment for all of our community. And if we can go to the next slide. I'm going to hand it over to Peggy, and she will talk about how we envision implementing this work.
Thank you very much, Danielle. So how do we go forward? What is our implementation plan? How do we move toward achieving the goals that Danielle has outlined? Next slide, please. So our next step is, now that we've completed the recommendation, is to go forward with implementation groups. We have 6 groups that we're going to be working with to implement the highest priority recommendations from all of our committees. We have identified leadership groups, both leads and support organizations for this. And the point that I want to make as I share these lead groups with you is that this is, as Mr. Hall said, is a county-wide effort. It is not an effort, it's an effort supported by San Mateo County, but it's going to involve multiple agencies, multiple organizations to be successful. So on the public and mental health area, the San Mateo County Health System is the lead organization. Next. And for basic needs, it's going to be a collaboration between our Human Services Agency, which provides a variety of programs, and other providers, Samaritan House and other nonprofit organizations and our core services agencies that assist with housing and basic needs, and also Second Harvest and other providers that assist with food security and food provision of food. In terms of economic recovery, Thrive and SAMCETA will be taking the lead on the local economic recovery, both for nonprofits and small businesses. And we're working with a collaborative of Job Train, NOVA, and our Human Services Agency and Labor on this concept of what are the jobs of the future? What are the jobs going to be, and how do we best prepare people for those future jobs post-COVID? On the digital divide, there's been a group that's been working together for about the last 3 or 4 months that we are going to provide some support to, that includes this San Mateo County Economic Development Association, SAMCETA. It includes the County Office of Ed, Nancy McGee, and also our County Information Services Department, looking at how do we create a community-wide connectivity project. First 5 and 4 Cs are taking the lead on childcare and out-of-school care. And for transportation, Samtrans is taking the lead. So the point is, there are a variety of different organizations, and we're all working together. We're going to be working with those organizations to assess the greatest needs in their specific area and evaluate current gaps and identify opportunities. We're then going to develop a work plan to fill the gaps and meet those key needs, and then identify resources and both available and potential funding, because we know there isn't enough funding available today to complete all the work that needs to be done. And then finally, we're going to take action and track progress. Next slide. So there we go. So in terms of recovery indicators, what you'll see is that many of the indicators that we are going to use to track our progress in terms of the recovery are the same ones that we use to identify what the needs were. So in terms of basic needs, we're looking at how many extremely low income renters there are countywide. We're looking at the requests for emergency financial assistance, which primarily pay for rent, provide rent support. And we're also looking at the need for food assistance. Around the digital divide, we're tracking the number of households without Wi-Fi. And we're also tracking the number of students that still need assistance with connectivity now that distance learning has begun. For childcare, we're looking at the number of childcare providers requesting financial assistance, and we're also in the process of developing potentially some existing indicators for that area. And finally, for economic development, we're looking at the number of jobs lost. We're tracking our unemployment rate for San Mateo County, and we're also tracking numbers around small business closures. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Danielle to wrap up and share with you the website that we're using to track all this information.
Thank you, Peggy. We want to make sure that we're most of all understanding the impact of COVID and continuing to be on the right path. And we plan for our recovery initiative to be data-driven. And our thoughts are to track this really through our recovery initiative website, which will be going live this week. It's smcrecovery.org, and it will be available at the end of the week. The website will really, if we can go to the next slide, it'll track progress at the high level, and then there's an opportunity for folks to really dive in more deeply. This is just one example from one of the focus areas. This is the Bridging the Digital Divide. You'll see that there's the indicator that Peggy mentioned. And I should mention where we have information available by census tract, that's how we're providing it. So you can see in this example, there are 94 households, without Wi-Fi. We're also tracking the programs that are being developed to address the challenges experienced. On the other side of this slide, you can see that there's students without internet. And then we are tracking the pilot internet access program that's being implemented. So we hope that this will be a great source of information that will be up to date, and it will hold us accountable to make sure that we're actually achieving the goals of the recovery initiative. Next slide.
So that concludes our presentation. Thank you again for inviting us this evening. Should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, to Danielle, or to Jessica. We will send you the links to the webpage when it is up and running, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Being a part of this group was eye-opening. It was a great collaboration. I think there are a lot of organizing parts to it, and I think that the organization was really well received. The conversations in the breakout groups were just, I think they were very well managed, and there were some great suggestions. So I think it was a great process, and I really enjoyed being a part of it. So I'm wondering if there are any questions from the council or comments, and I can't see everybody on my screen. So if you would just speak up, that would be great.
I'm raising my hand.
Yes, please, Councilmember Hindi.
Thank you so much. I want to first start by thanking Peggy, Jessica, and Danielle for this great presentation. I mean, clearly COVID-19 has hit us all very hard, right? But I think what the report is saying and what we have been experiencing in our community and the county is really, it highlighted the inequities, as you have rightfully so have mentioned this several times in your report, the inequities in our community, right? And this is before COVID. But pre-COVID, our people who are the most vulnerable, they were managing somehow, some way to squeak by. And this pandemic came in and it really put the spotlight of how unfair and how these inequities will have a devastating impact on communities, members of our community that are at disadvantage. And disadvantage, I've always said, not because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. It's just simply the disparity in income. And here we are in Silicon Valley where you have the highest income household, and yet you have folks who are working 40, 60, 70 hours a week and not able to afford a shelter or healthcare. So I think I appreciate everything that you put into this. Just my 2 cents, I think in the long future, we're really gonna address these social issues that were existing pre-COVID, such as healthcare, education, housing, that really putting out so many folks at disadvantage. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Vice Mayor Gahani.
Yep. Thank you, Peggy, Jessica, Danielle. I mean, what a big problem to try and get your arms around. You know, this is I think COVID's a big equalizer. No one really had the experience to come in and guide us through it. And I still feel like, you know, for small businesses, this is a marathon. The PPP has been exhausted. A lot of small businesses didn't get EIDL. They're not familiar with Main Street lending. They're not really going out and getting access to funding that they really need to get. And, you know, while there was a little bit of getting your nose above water with the PPP for a period of time, I'm concerned about what we're looking at over the next 4 to 6 months. I'm deeply concerned for small businesses. I think we're going to see a lot more closures, you know, and so when I look at a recovery plan, I think it was appropriate when you looked at the near term and short term and long term, where you put in 2021 for your short term. I thought that was really appropriate because I think businesses are still in survival mode. A lot of small businesses are still in survival mode, and I think they're going to continue to be in survival mode for the next 2 quarters, 1 to 2 quarters at least. And I think when you look at childcare specifically as one of your key issues, I think it's essential for reopening the economy. And when you look at the real challenges, when you kind of peel back the onion there and you look at 4 C's, the issue isn't the organization or the operational efficiency within the organization, it's the access to funds. They don't have enough access to funds to help all the people that they need to help. And more people are falling into that bucket every day. Then if you look at the velocity of people falling into that bucket, it's much higher than the velocity of people falling out, you know, moving up and not needing that service anymore. And that's limiting, you know, parents' ability to go out and find a job even. And so I think as you peel back the onion there, the real challenges are going to be in cities opening up space for childcare, enabling that space, discussions with landlords, enabling landlords to kind of, you know, to have some relief from their bills so they can pass that on in the form of reduced rents, you know, for tenants. It's in the post-COVID era or the current COVID era, I think commercial real estate just doesn't have the same value as it did in January. It's very difficult to justify that price per square foot in San Mateo County in commercial space. Yet a lot of tenants are having very difficult conversations with landlords if they didn't have force majeure clauses or no act of God protection, things like that. You're seeing a lot of pressure on small businesses from there as well. and so with childcare in specific, I think looking at, enabling funding for those that really need it, that are coming in through the 4 Cs, and then enabling space could help your midterm to, or short-term to longer-term strategy. Of course, in the near term, it's just strictly about survival. I think for most small businesses. And so those are my comments, but I really wanted to thank you for taking a shot at getting your arms around a pandemic and the impact to all of us. I mean, what a big hurdle to try and jump over. And I appreciate your efforts. And I just welcome you with open arms. Is anything that we can do? I speak for myself, anything I can do to help, please feel free to reach out. But if I could even, for my colleagues, I'm sure would be open to any discussion to help San Mateo County in trying to find a path forward.
Councilmember Wasti.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would also thank Jessica, Peggy, and Danielle for your excellent presentation, and more importantly, the work that you're doing. Needless to say, this is challenging for businesses as well as for residents. And what an extreme challenge that you undertook. And I'm extremely impressed by the comprehensive planning as well as the implementation of it. And I would just quickly want to mention that the work that you all are doing at the county level is so meaningful to the cities, to us as council members, and it allows us to focus on our core municipal responsibilities, which are so important. So when we get your help and your support in handling social services to the extent that it can be, we all realize the challenge, the gigantic task in front of us, as we talk about short-term, middle-term, and long-term recovery. We as individual cities are also dealing with similar situations, but your work is so important because it allows us to remain focused on our core municipal responsibilities. What we call non-glamorous things, as it relates to infrastructure, if you will, or, day-to-day stuff that our residents deal with. And that's where we come in. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for letting us do what we can do and really focus in on our core responsibilities. Your efforts are extremely meaningful, and thank you again.
Thank you. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you. I also wanted to thank the ladies. It was a very nice presentation. I think the real important part of the county taking the lead on this is it allows the entities within the county to collaborate instead of compete. We're able to work together on the issue rather than competing for those same resources, which I think is really important. And I really wanted to echo Councilmember Hindy's comments that basically what COVID has done is COVID has brought to the front burner things that have been in our communities forever or for a while, and it's just amplified them to the point where they are now something that we're addressing because of COVID. So I too appreciate the amount of work that's gone into where we are so far and where we're going to go. And I'm glad that we're collaborating rather than competing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again, Peggy, Danielle, and Jessica. It's been a great experience working on this with all of you. And I really applaud you for taking this on because it was a huge responsibility. And I think everything was so well organized, and we've come up with some great recommendations. So I want to thank you and thank the county for taking this on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us this evening.
Thank you. So next item, please.
Item 8.3, Levy Improvements Project Monthly Project Report, CIP 657, General Update.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, staff and the levy subcommittee would like to provide a general update on the levy project since you were last updated on July 20th. Councilmember Fruman and Councilmember Owasi will take turns presenting the monthly construction manager's report, which will be prepared by Tanner Pacific and our construction manager for the levy project at the end of each month throughout the construction project. I believe Councilmember Fruman will present the first report. At the end of his report, if there's any questions, I'm available. Hope I'm not surprising you, John.
No, we didn't script this, but I know that Councilmember Owasi has a couple of very specific topics that she wants to cover. So I will leave those to her. Okay. And I'll cover the report that we talked about at our last meeting, was coming to us in a very in a formatted manner so that it's consistent throughout the project and we know exactly what we're looking at. And it's very simple for those that have been able to view it on the agenda packet. It's only a couple pages right now, aside from photographs. And it identifies the contractor, the construction management firm, and the designers. It tells the reporting period. In this case, it's the month of September. It tells us, and there it is. It tells us the number of days in our project, the number of days that we're into it. If we've granted additional time, it has on there our notice to proceed date of September 28th, which is very important for us that we are underway. As we move forward, it'll discuss in the cost management update section, which is the bottom third here. It will talk about the amount of the contract value is there, how much we've spent to date. The CCOs are change orders, so you'll know what the amount of change orders are and how that affects our contingency. And on the next page there, you can continue scrolling. It talks about what we've done during the recently completed period. Our contractor has worked to mobilize and clear the area at Sea Cloud Park as well as at Bridgeview Park to prepare to put in their base camp, basically offices at Bridgeview Park and a base camp at Sea Cloud, which will help improve efficiency as they move materials from their base area out to the various work sites. The closer they can get the materials, the more efficient they can be. The initial submittals talk about scheduling, site setup, and how they plan on taking care of those. In the upcoming month period, they'll work on continuing to provide submittals. I believe Norm said there's 98 or somewhere in that number that are required throughout the project. They talk about, it's regular communication really, that talks about the supplies and process they're going to go through as we move through the process. And it keeps everybody in line and up to speed with one another. They will mobilize their main office sites at Bridgeview Park, bringing in the trailers that you typically see at a major construction site. Arrival of sheet piles and imported material, that's metal sheets and dirt. What we'll be using to increase the height of the levee as well as the sheet piles are used to help provide the reinforcement and the security of is the main purpose of the project. The staging of those materials along Beach Park Boulevard, again, our southernmost portion of the project will be at Shorebird Park. And so that's where they're going to store some of the materials northernmost. The end. One of the points, they're going to be putting some equipment, and there is the potential as we move along, if we receive the correct permissions to be able to use some of these areas more robustly to help improve efficiencies with the project. The Bay Trail has been posted for closure from Shorebird Park to the Port Royal Rock Harbor area for that work to continue. I'm glad I'm seeing your face, Norm, so I get the head nods. So they'll be staging materials, and then the hybrid sheet pile flood wall construction will start to begin over the next month. So that's what our project looks like. And if we can go down, thank you for scrolling. It provides some pictures. They're not the most dynamic pictures right now, but as the progress moves forward on the project, the community will get to see how things are moving along, how it's looking, and how close we get to completion. So I'm happy that this is a very concise way to show the public how we're moving forward. Thank you, and I will go ahead and pass it off to Councilmember Wasti.
Thank you, Councilmember Fruman. To be able to complete the levy project on time and budget remains our key critical goal. And we as, I know I'm speaking for Councilmember Fruman as well, as levy subcommittee members are trying our best to ask questions and help the staff in whichever way possible. We get questions from the residents, and the staff and the outreach consultants are doing their best to communicate them. Last week in the candidate forum, there were a couple of questions raised by a candidate, and as a member of the levy subcommittee, I felt it was my responsibility to work with staff to get answers to those questions. And thank you, Dante, for providing these responses to me after consulting with the city attorney, the right attorney. I would not quote that incorrectly. I know you consulted with the appropriate folks, and we rely on staff to provide us with the most accurate information. And I will just share with everyone what was provided to me. So the question, the two questions, the first question was, doesn't the EIR, Environment Impact Report, require the Bay Trail to be closed in segments with no contiguous segments closed at the same time? The response to that is the project studied by EIR contemplated that the Bay Trail would be closed in segments and no contiguous segments closed at the same time. I think this is very important, that no contiguous segments be closed at the same time. Based on what Dante has shared with me, the contractor is preparing a detour plan that will generally comply with this directive from the EIR report. The public will receive 30-day notice prior to any section being closed. I understand that there was a little bit of clarification needed. So once Dante provided me this response, I tried to confirm with him whether this aligns with the notices and the communications already sent out. And Dante confirmed that, but also added that there is potentially a clarification needed, which staff will very quickly jump on and will clarify to the residents. So that's question. That's the first question. So before I answer the second question, I also want to mention last week when the subcommittee met, one of the pieces of information I requested from Norm, and Norm provided that, was what are the different notifications we are required by compliance? We are required to remain compliant, and have we met them? So I kind of requested a table which Norm provided. So anyone who is interested in that table, Norm will be happy to share that. So far we have complied, we are in compliance when it comes to notifications that are required per our contractual agreement. So with that, the second question, so will any of the city's parks be closed to the public during the project construction? At this time, the city does not intend to close any of its parks during the levy construction. If the contractor proposes to close any parks or portions of parks to facilitate project construction, that proposal will be brought to all of us for approval. And any additional environment analysis would be conducted to confirm that such proposed closure would not result in new or more significant impacts that were not addressed by the EIR. I believe on this one is what you were sending additional communication, right? Not the prior question.
That's correct.
Yeah. So this is the one where you were explaining how it would be best to clarify what the majority of the park will remain open versus some sections, which is part of the communication. So those are the two questions. Again, we are happy to share the communication and the table that I referred to that shows that we have been compliant so far. And Dante, if I may ask one of the questions, will shorebird part, I keep hearing this and I think it'll be good to clarify this. Will shorebird part be closed, is being considered to be closed or used as a staging area or no?
So we've been discussing that, and again, the intent or what was contemplated in the EIR was that we would not close parts. The contractor has the ability to propose staging areas that would save time and save money. And we will be required to take a look at that. And if possible, we would come back to City Council to get that approval and also look at it from an environmental impact perspective. I think the confusion in the community was that we're discussing it internally as staff, but we have not made any definitive plans. If we determine that this is a good choice for us, that will save, like I said, time and money, that would come to the City Council for approval.
Okay, thank you, Dante.
Yeah.
That would be all from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions from the council?
I really appreciate your comprehensive report. That was great. It was a great update, and I appreciate all the work that you've done on that. Do I have any questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
Thank you, Subcommittee, for this report, and I think it will be helpful for the public very well. One suggestion, if I may have, Councilmember Awasi had mentioned a table of compliance. I think rather than waiting for the public to ask for it, let's put that in our information on the levy as well, so it'll be accessible to everyone, not just those. You don't need to have people request it, just make it available, I think would be helpful.
Great idea. Any other questions or suggestions? Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani.
Well, first of all, I want to thank staff and the subcommittee, I really like the structure of that manager's report. Really gives us a great overview of where we're at. I also want to thank the subcommittee for their engagement with the community. I heard from the heads of AYSO, and I think they were engaging with, I'm not sure if it was both of you, Councilmember Awasthi and Councilmember Fruman, but I definitely heard about their engagement with you, Councilmember Fruman, with regards to, maybe having a stop sign near Sea Cloud Park as people are coming in and making the right turn into Sea Cloud Park, where, there's some concerns there with the staging area and how you went out there and listened to them. And maybe that was both of you, but I definitely heard about that. And I want to thank both of you for engaging with the community there and our sports organizations. I just wanted some clarification. It's a very comprehensive report, but I wanted to make sure what I heard last week was that there was an issue with CEQA in like page 400 of the EIR report. And I want to make sure that does that align to the contiguous sections being closed? Is that what that was? That was a correlation between that? Okay, fantastic. So there is no issue with CEQA on page 400 to 4 whatever or something like that. Sorry if I misremembered if that's a word that's used or if I didn't recall correctly. But there's no issue there. The other concern, and I think that's very important for the community, right? And I think that's why I'm really asking the community to come to us, whether it's council, staff, come to the revamped levy page for the facts, the transparent, real information that, if you have questions, you can easily sign up there to get updates. You can ask questions. We have a hotline. Just come to us. Like we have the information. Norm's done a great job. Dante, you're doing a great job with it. I appreciate that. I guess the other concern I have is, something that you mentioned, City Manager Hall, about conversations happening in a meeting at City Hall, like within staff, and that being, the community kind of being misinformed that that's the direction that we're headed in. And I would just, this is a very sensitive, very important project, the biggest project, I think, where we've taken on since the city being built. And I would just ask staff to just be a little bit more cognizant of the importance of what they're saying out in the community and make sure that we have the message coming through from one source, whether it be online or through the formal channels, as opposed to taking information out, because we just don't need any more confusion in the community. Those are my only comments there. Just once again, I really want to thank the subcommittee and staff for taking the bull by the horns here and really giving us tremendous insight into the project early on and establishing the framework for us to have continued insight as we move forward through the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Fruman.
Yes, I was going to wait and make a comment at the close of the meeting, but since Councilmember or Vice Mayor Gahani brought it up, I do have a little bit of advantage that I don't work during the day, so it made it easier for me to go to that meeting at Sea Cloud Park. But I think it was really important that staff, and it wasn't just staff, the construction management firm, the contractor, all met with our youth sports leaders. And the youth sports leaders, I think it's really also important to note that they were there to collaborate on how we together move forward. They offered up, basically, they could be a conduit of information to their families, the families that participate in the youth sports. The nice thing is they even talked about being champions of the project, not supporting necessarily the concerns, but championing how do we move forward together, which was really nice. Staff was very understanding, and staff and our vendors, our contractors, were very understanding of the needs of youth sports. The good thing is the gentleman who was standing next to me, and I think he was from the construction company, he has a kid that plays youth sports. He knows exactly what the concerns are. And I want to say one of his children, or maybe more than one, have played at Sea Cloud Park in tournaments. So there is an understanding on the part of everybody involved, the importance of the various aspects of this project to include youth sports. And the youth sports folks simply wanted to understand what is the impact so they can find a way to work within those confines. And that is so refreshing, as opposed to somebody coming in and saying, you're doing what? You got to change it to meet our needs. They understood that this is a relatively short-term inconvenience for a very important project that benefits the entire community. And I, for one, want to thank our youth sports leaders for coming forward with that mindset and being part of our team to make this happen.
Thank you. Yes, that's great to hear too. The collaboration is great. And I want to thank the subcommittee for all the hard work on this and staff, and for clarifying some of those issues that came up and the misinformation out there in the public. So that really helps a lot. So I think we need receive and accept the report.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Good. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept the report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Great. Councilmember Awasthi?
Yes.
Fruman?
Yes.
Gahani?
Yes.
Hindi?
Yes.
And Mayor Mohampour?
Yes.
Item passes with all council members voting yes.
Thank you. Next item, please.
8.4, report on wastewater treatment plant master plan improvements, project CIP 455652, Clean Water Program, update for June 2020 through September 2020. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please raise your hand during this time. After the staff report is presented, we will call on you to speak.
Staff report, please.
It's me again. Good evening, Madam President, members of the District Board. Tonight, I'd like to provide a general update on the jointly owned wastewater treatment plant for the period of June 2020 through September of 2020. This report summarizes the progress of the wastewater treatment plant for the City of San Mateo Estero Municipal Improvement District's wastewater jointly owned plant for the months of June 2020 through September 2020. Since we just updated you on the levee project, which is a significant project in our city, I also wanted to update you guys on the wastewater treatment plant, which is actually an even larger project in the city, although it's financed a little bit differently. It's financed with our wastewater rates. So the wastewater treatment plant expansion consists of three main, what are called guaranteed maximum price GMP contracts. And I just want to go over them real quick because they're all actually awarded now. So package one is essentially the excavation and subgrade for the wastewater treatment plant. It had a guaranteed price of just over $33 million. And it was awarded back in 2019. And the estimated completion date is June of 2021. Most recently, they've completed the stabilization of the mass excavation subgrade. It's a big hole in the ground, and there's a lot of piles in it, and it's going to be certainly supported for years to come. So that's one of the main packages that was awarded last year. And then earlier this year, package two, which is the pile driving and the foundation work, it had a guaranteed price of just over $17 million. So they've done the survey and they've driven over 575 piles. There's, I think, 1,500 more to go. So they're a quarter of the way done. The anticipated date for package two is January of 2022. And then most recently was our package three, and this is essentially all the work that's up above the foundation and pile support. So it's everything above ground. It's installation of all the reactor facilities, all the pipes that take the sewage and get it treated. So that's the largest of the pricing. And on September 21st, the contract was awarded by the City of San Mateo with us as a partner for almost $380 million. It's the largest package, but it's the good news is all the heavy lifting of getting the packages done is complete. The reason it's really important for the guaranteed maximum price contracts, this is a little different than the normal, low bidder contract work. The contractor and the city and our construction management staff work in concert with each other throughout the completion of that design and come up with an agreed upon price. And this should limit a lot of the change orders that typically occurs in larger projects. And we should be assured of a reasonable contingency. So this is really exciting news, and the largest package is due to be completed in 2024, and that's it's the schedule that we need to meet in order to make the compliance requirements. So that's the biggest update I wanted to bring you up to date on. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Yes, Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you, Norma. I just wanted to clarify, we're not building anew and moving. We're building an expansion and still maintaining and using the existing facility. Is that accurate?
It is. Just to clarify though, we don't have the benefit of putting everything on hold for 4 years while we build the new plant.
Right.
So the existing plant needs to stay in operation. We're essentially building the new, what's called the front end. It's the liquid handling. All the liquids will go to the new plant. Meanwhile, we have to make sure that the old plant still functions.
So in the end, will there be both of them, or are we demolishing the old one?
So in the end, what's going to happen is once the new plant is up and operational, some of the old plant will be refurbished to provide for additional storage, and other areas will be demoed in order to make room for operational procedures. So we are getting all intents and purposes, it's going to be a new plant, but it's going to be bigger and handle all the wet weather flows. So it's a combination of new and refurbishing the old in order to make the new work. So,
thank you.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Norm, thank you for your update. Much appreciated. I got a question for you on the budget impact. It says that the project is projected to be 17 million over budget, and $4 of that $1 million would be the city of Foster City or the Estero Municipal. A question, from the past update to this update, has that number changed, or was this the old over budget number?
It's a minor change. It was, I think we were at 154, so about $3 million in difference. It is spread out over 30 years, and our rates are adaptable to that. There's going to be some savings in that. Some of the original cost was based on potential higher financing, which we are going to be getting a WIFIA loan, which we just recently got our ratings for. And that should be completed at the end of this month. And then we'll also be getting a state revolving fund loan, which is significantly lower interest rates than what we projected. So overall, our rate proposal that we presented to you this last budget go around for the 5-year rates is not subject to, we're not looking to change that. And even the out years are looking pretty consistent. So.
Thank you. That's great relief for all of us, obviously, here who pay these rates. But my question specifically was there an additional $1 million you're saying from the last report to this report? I didn't understand quite, Frank.
Between 150, it went from 154 to 157. So between $3 and $4 million.
From last report to this report?
Yeah, because we got the final guaranteed maximum price ironed out. We didn't have that on the last report. They were still working on negotiating that. They've been working on renegotiating that last guaranteed maximum price for about 8 months to a year. They were significantly over, and so they negotiated it down to be not quite as bad. I mean, it was a little bit higher than what was anticipated many years ago or several years ago, but costs are what they are, and they worked through and did some design changes, and they came up to an agreed price.
Sounds good. And this maximum cost agreement really will give us more stability moving forward as far as no fluctuation, hopefully, unless there's a change of order that's not anticipated.
Correct. Just for example, a typical change order range is 10 to 15%, like we have 15% on the levy. On this particular contract, they're at 3.7% for change orders. So it's going to be, they're not anticipating nearly as many because they've negotiated a lot of stuff. So
sure, I appreciate that. And then my last question, to what level is Foster City involved in those negotiations that you were talking about?
Not very much at all. I mean, we are informed of the numbers, but it's, this project is managed by Jacobs, and they're the ones that have the time and the expertise to dive into this complex project. We have some, Steve Tarantino does some checking for us and confirmation that the numbers seem to make sense. But as far as the day-to-day operations, that's not where we are.
Correct. So that's led by San Mateo, obviously, but we do have the mechanism to protect our interest and check that these negotiated agreements are valid and they protect our interest. That's all I'm asking.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So those contingencies are what you're calling change orders, correct?
Yeah, it's a little bit different wording with the guaranteed maximum price contract. they're what are called owner's contingencies. So, you know, it's anytime they ask for a cost increase, they have to justify it. And it's a little bit different than a traditional contract, but a lot of stuff's negotiated ahead of time, and you know, they're part of the design team at the end of the design project. So they're brought into at the 65% design level, and then they are actually saying, hey, if you did this, it might help save you money here, or it might be more efficient to install it so we can give you a better price. And they really, I mean, that's why it takes 8 months to a year. It's a longer process, but the nicer part is when you're there, there's not as many unforeseen things because a lot more work is done in the design.
So those savings, like typical contingencies, it says can vary between 5 to 10, but you believe that the 3.7 is appropriate.
For this kind of a contract, they're saying typical contingencies on a construction project of that type, not being a design bid build project, is in the 5 to 10% range. If you're doing a traditional design, you bid it out to low bidder, you might have a 5 to 10% for those kinds of projects. But for a negotiated project like this, guaranteed maximum price, they're looking at a 3.7% contingency. That's like I said, it's showing you that there shouldn't be as many unforeseen circumstances in the project.
Okay. And so you're saying that Foster City really doesn't have much say in this, but we are kept apprised of everything that's going on, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we are brought into, you know, biweekly meetings on updates on the project. We get the monthly reports, and you know, like I said, we work with Steve Tarantino, our consultant, to verify those meetings. He attends some of the contract construction meetings and design meetings.
So if we have any questions, we're fully able to go in and question something.
Yes.
That's correct, Mayor.
Exactly.
We have the ability to provide input and ask questions.
I just want to make sure of that, because I don't want people to think that we don't have the ability to ask.
I agree. We have the ability to intervene or ask questions if necessary.
Okay. If you see something going on that
yep.
Ordinary or okay. Those are my questions. Any other questions from anybody?
John?
Yes. I see you, Fruman, Councilmember Fruman.
Just a real quick comment. When you're talking about the interest, and I get what Councilmember Hindy's talking about. You know, if we're not at the table, how are we assured that our interests are being considered? And I'm noticing in the staff report, I knew I'd seen it. When you're talking about package number 3 that Norm mentioned just got approved at $380 million, the following sentence says a total cost reduction of approximately $31.2 million was realized through the team's collective efforts. That's a considerable amount of money when we're not sitting at the table. Somebody's looking out for our collective best interests when you're reducing a package by $31.2 million, if I'm reading that correctly. I'm pretty confident that people are looking out for our best interests. I agree with you, Councilmember Hindy. We need to be intimately involved, especially when it's this expensive. But a savings like that means that people are really looking into it seriously.
Thank you. Okay, so if that's all your comments, we need a motion to receive and accept the report.
I'll make a motion to receive and accept the report.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second, so roll call vote, please.
Emit Director Awasthi?
Yes.
Fruman?
Yes.
Kahani?
Yes.
Hindy?
Yes.
And President Mohampour?
Yes.
Great. Item passes with all Emit directors and President Mohampour voting yes.
Thank you. Next item, please, and thank you for the report.
Item 9, resolutions for adoption. 9.1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Foster City approving an agreement with Flock Group Incorporated for the licensing of 20 automated license plate readers ALPRs in the amount of $31,665 for the initial term of 8 months, followed by $40,000 for renewal terms of 12 months, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement and providing the opportunity for the public comment pursuant to California Civil Code Section 1798.90.558. Anyone who wants to provide a public comment, please raise your hand during this time. After the staff report is presented, we will call on you to speak.
Thank you. Staff report, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight I am bringing you an agreement with Flock Group for the licensing of ALPR cameras. Also, as was stated, to provide an opportunity for public comment. Over the past several years, many cities throughout the Bay Area have seen a marked increase in property crimes. Since 2016, Foster City has seen a 77% increase in thefts from vehicles and an 88% increase in residential burglaries. At least 7 of those residential burglaries were committed in the evening, and in 2 occurrences, residents were home and encountered the burglars. The implementation of an automated license plate reader program can aid Foster City PD in the following ways: locate stolen, wanted, or subject of investigation vehicles, locate and apprehend individuals subject to arrest warrants or otherwise lawfully sought by law enforcement, locate witnesses and victims of violent crimes, locate missing and at-risk persons, including those subject to Amber or Silver Alert. Foster City is particularly vulnerable to crime as it's at the intersection of major freeways, which provide criminals with easy access into the neighborhoods. The increasing utilization of ALPR technology within neighboring cities likely lessens criminal activity within those communities, while the lack of this technology within Foster City could make it more inviting and opportune target for criminals. With the advent and advancement in technology, ALPRs are becoming common tools for numerous law enforcement agencies throughout San Mateo County. Most cities are now utilizing ALPR technology. Due to the limited routes of ingress and egress within Foster City, cameras can be effectively placed in strategic locations. So ALPR, they're a computer-based high-speed camera system designed to capture images of vehicle license plates in public places. Those license plate images are compared against local, state, and federal law enforcement databases containing vehicles of interest, stolen vehicles, Amber Alerts, Silver Alert, missing persons, felony vehicles. Any matches against a vehicle of interest generates an alert to notify the officers using the system. Under strict regulations and audit procedures, the data may only be accessed for lawful law enforcement investigative purposes and can provide critical evidence in the identification and location of suspects. A significant pattern associated with rise in property crimes is that many cities are being targeted by out-of-town criminals. Some of these criminals use vehicles to enter and exit the city. These cases can often be solved using ALPR programs because they capture suspect vehicle information, which often provides critical information to investigate. ALPR data will not be stored or retained by Foster City Police Department or any vendor beyond 30 days, nor will it be warehoused or commingled with any private company data. Foster City Police Department will utilize the strictest industry standards and maintain compliance with California law with respect to how the data is accessed. Access to the data will be strictly regulated and is for law enforcement personnel only. The system only can be accessed under the following guidelines. Persons gaining access must have completed training on system use, system security, and issues surrounding the need and right to know. Upon completion of the training, personnel will be issued access codes so all of their uses of the system can be tracked. There must be a legitimate law enforcement purpose, which must be stated upon access. And access is only allowed when there is an active investigation or criminal case number from a law enforcement agency as a way to further verify and track its use. The ALPR system does not identify any individual or access anyone's personal information through its analysis of license plate characters. The data captured by the ALPR unit itself is entirely anonymous. Officers can only identify the registered owner of a vehicle by querying a separate, secure state government database of vehicle license plate records, which is restricted, controlled, and audited. Information obtained by ALPR cameras will be closely safeguarded and protected by both procedural and technological means. Flock Safety provides a customizable ALPR program designed to meet the needs and budgets of all agencies of all sizes. The cameras are $2,000 per camera, which includes all maintenance costs, pole installation, software maintenance, and equipment replacement every 3 years. An added benefit of the Flock cameras is that they are solar powered, which negates the need for a close proximity power source. One significant benefit of the camera system is that city staff would not be burdened with the installation or maintenance of the Flock cameras. Flock also upgrades their equipment every 3 years, thereby ensuring the cameras would stay current with this rapidly changing and evolving technology. Flock Safety's required data retention period is 30 days. There is a hard deletion of data at 30 days, and once the data is purged, it cannot be retrieved, not even with a subpoena. Location of cameras that we've decided is East 3rd at Mariners, 92 at Metro, 92 at Chess, Metro at Gateway, Edgewater at Gateway, Edgewater at East Hillsdale, East and West East Hillsdale at Twin Bridges, and East and West at Chess, west of Vintage Park Drive. The 20th camera will be mounted on the radar trailer, which can be deployed to locations where criminal activity is frequently occurring. We recommend investment in this equipment to increase safety and security for the community. That concludes my report. We have with us tonight John Anderson, Alex LaTraverse, and Garrett Langley from Flock Group, and they will share some information about Flock and answer some frequently asked questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that we do have a couple of public comments, so we'll go to them. Rob?
Okay, first public comment is Tamar.
Hello, is the audio working?
Yes, it's working. Thank you.
So hi, my name is Tamar. I believe that this resolution should not be passed because it is an expensive and unnecessary cost at an inappropriate time considering the negative economic impact of COVID. The money is better spent elsewhere and not on dramatically increasing surveillance of Foster City residents, which will be a byproduct of using the license plate readers. This should not be a priority of the council, and the council should poll residents and seek more input from residents before deciding to make such a drastic purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Second hand is Ben Rodnick.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you everybody for your time. My name is Ben Nerdick. I'm a resident here in Foster City. I have concerns about the implementation of a technology like this in our neighborhood, and I hope that we'll all take some time to seek some additional community input and maybe revisit this after we've had some chances to discuss the impact that this may have in our community, as well as maybe a time where there's more traffic on the roads of Foster City. It is kind of concerning to me that we're deploying this technology at a time where traffic is at an all-time low in Foster City due to the current COVID traffic conditions. I would think that in order to better prove the efficacy of this technology, we would want to deploy it when our traffic is at a more normal rate of level. If other neighboring cities are using this technology, I think we should be also seeking hard data to exactly how many prosecutions these cameras are actually leading to in those communities. I don't think any of that information has been made available, but if local cities are using this technology, then that data should absolutely be requested and obtained so that we can get a sense of whether it's effective or not. I do want to correct a couple of points that were made during the staff report. While individual personal information may not be retained by this system, the system doesn't just track pictures of license plates. It tracks movement of license plates. It tracks where individuals are going. It tracks when they go there. It tracks at what speeds they go there. It tracks their routines. This is behavior that is deeply personal. It's not simply whether someone's driving a Toyota Corolla. It's when that Corolla goes to CVS. It's when they go to the Safeway. It's when they drive down Beach Park Boulevard. this is information that is not as black and white as is being portrayed. I also want to point out that while individual data is not retained beyond 30 days, the agreement that has been provided very clearly states that the provider of this technology will be maintaining and collecting aggregated data based on the use of this service for its own commercial purposes. So this particular service provider is also discussing a platform called Talon that is being used for crime prevention on a greater level. This data is not, it's just not accurate to state that data is not collected or stored for only 30 days. It is collected and retained for longer periods of time under de-anonymization procedures that haven't been fully explained here. I know I'm running out of time and there are deeper technical and philosophical questions that should be had and discussed. And I just hope that this City Council will take the time to delay this implementation for now, answer those questions, and come back when we have full information. Thank you again for your time and consideration and for hearing me on this late evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
The next speaker is MK.
MK, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that. I would also just like to, add my support behind Tamar, and then I have the same concerns about privacy. And I did look into this back when the city council had approved the budget for the PD, and this was one of the issues that community members had brought up about ALPR purchases. And at the time, the city council basically said, let us just approve the PD budget for now, but it doesn't mean that we will actually, end up spending the money on specific things that may be problematic to certain community members, and we'll encourage further dialogue. So that's how we move forward, but we haven't really had the opportunity to have that more further dialogue specifically to this ALPR technology. I have looked into it, and while I have not seen a lot of independent studies apart from the business interests that want to promote and benefit financially from this technology, I have not seen independent data to show that it basically helps solving crimes or reduces crime rates. That, in addition to reduced traffic and all the privacy concerns arising, how this data would be used, and the fact that the company can, not the city council, but the provider can use our data for commercial interest. And Ben is absolutely right. It's not just tracking what car you drive, it's actually tracking your movement, which presents significant privacy concerns, especially for American citizens, because we do not have a constitutional right to privacy because our Constitution was written in the 1700s. So given we don't have that constitutional right, I think it's even more important for our local governments to protect the citizens from such surveillance equipment. So I would urge you to either vote no or at least postpone the vote so that we can have further dialogue and come to a consensus about how to address issues associated with this technology. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any more hands raised, do we, Rob?
No, that was the last hand.
Thank you. And thank you all for talking. That's great. Questions? Yes, Councilmember Hindi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me thank everyone who spoke about this issue. I'm quite surprised that this item is before us, especially, Madam Mayor, this came when I was the mayor last year, pretty much almost at the same month. It came from former Police Chief Perucci requesting the ALPR. And we met on the subcommittee level. You were included in that subcommittee. And we raised, and the city attorney was present at the meeting. City manager was present at the meeting, the former city manager, just to be clear, not Dante. And we raised, both of us, I think we were in agreement. We raised our concerns about two main issues. One, that this is such an important topic not because of ALPR, because of privacy and privacy issues. And one thing that we raised was very loud and clear that such actions cannot be taken by council without proper public input and comments. And I'm sorry, I cannot fathom why would this come and we expect this to have proper public input and comment. When did this agenda get published? What day?
When did it come out? Last Wednesday, Thursday, Dante?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When was this agenda published?
It was last Thursday.
Yeah, so if any one of us thinks that the public is waiting for this agenda to be published and for them to come in and chime in on an important matter such as privacy, I think we're grossly mistaken. When we said in the subcommittee level last year that we need to have proper noticing, not only proper noticing, we need to have proper dialogue. We really need to understand what is it that's important. What is it that folks like the four that spoke before us today, and I'm sure there are many, but those four happen to get the notice and happen to be, this is a topic that's important to them. And I could guarantee you there are 1,000 in this community who feel one way or another about privacy. And I don't care what side they are on, but I think we cannot make these decisions without having the public come in and tell us how they feel, what their concerns are. And I think the most important thing that we talked about also on the subcommittee level, and I think you, Mayor, and I agreed, that what we want to see was we want to have a surveillance ordinance rather than piecemeal it. We want to have a policy about how do we handle these issues, right? Including the license plate reader. That was what I agree on. So that's why I'm surprised why this coming to us now without those two requests being met. So I have no idea. Maybe someone could help me understand it. But regardless, I am not ready to make a decision on this before having enough public input. Public needs to be noticed in a good period of time so they get the opportunity to come in and share their concerns. I don't think there's anything more important than privacy and civil liberties that we could just come in and vote in a 3 days notice, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and tell the public, here we are, live with it. I think it takes a whole lot more than this for this to happen. And again, I think it's extremely important for us to have talk about surveillance ordinances. So it will encompass, because this will not be the last time that you're gonna have technology coming in to help in crime. And let me just be clear. I have no problem providing our PD with the tools they need to solve crime. I have no problem providing our community the tools that will minimize and deter crimes happening in our community. On the contrary, I will provide everything that I can. But at the same time, I gotta protect the privacy of the people. I gotta make sure that everybody has an opportunity to voice their concerns, their opinion. So those are my comments at this point. Thank you so much. I'll come back if I need to.
Thank you. I think that, I think the technology really lends itself to, there are a lot of issues, and privacy, of course, is one of the very highest concerns for me. And I think that maybe this is something that we do need to have a study session where the public can come in and notice it, ahead of time, and see how everybody feels about this. I think this is an important thing to gain input on. So, other comments? Yes, Councilmember Wasi.
I have a couple of questions. I also agree on the privacy concerns and especially public input on that. But since we have this opportunity, I had a couple of additional questions that I wanted to ask, either Dante or Chief Avalar, can you speak a little bit about the ROI? I know it's an investment, it's an ongoing investment. Is there any concrete, tangible ROI that you can share at this time?
Are you talking about like the efficiency of the equipment?
Well, I'm talking about kind of along those lines. What I'm talking about is if we invest whatever X dollars today, we expect the returns financially. They're intangible benefits, protection and being able to detect crime, but are there dollar benefits that we will be able to realize as a result of some cost savings, et cetera? On other areas, you'll save some cost.
Yeah, I don't know that there would be cost savings. I know that there are results from the ALPR cameras as far as solving crime. But as far as a cost benefit, I don't know that I can speak to that.
Okay. So based on reading the staff report and based on the comments and the emails that we have received, I think there are three key areas that we should be looking at. One is, which I just touched on, the ROI. So we're making an investment in the difficult time that we are in. What is the return on investment? So that I just asked. The second one I heard was proven use. Do we have enough examples of this being used successfully and with proven results? So that's the second area. And the third one, obviously, is the privacy concerns, which a couple of us already talked about. Tracy, Chief Avalar, are you able to talk about the data storage a little bit more? I know you mentioned 30 days and quite a lot of restrictions on the usage of the data. So I have two questions on that. One question is along the lines of what a couple of residents have asked. Is there an aggregate data availability? So that's question number one. And the second one is the short-term data, the one that is stored for 30 days. If there are so many restrictions in using it, and I think we went over that in the staff report, would that limit the ability to use that data for the use it's intended to? So two questions, aggregate data and the limitations in using the 30-day data.
Right.
I wonder if this is a good time to involve the guys from FLOT too.
Right.
We have some of the technical questions, and also we can talk a little bit about success rates for other communities.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Garrett Langley. I'm actually the founder of the company. And thank you everyone for having us. And Chief Avalar as well, thank you for everything you do for the city. To answer some of the questions, first, I think there was a miscommunication from the public comments. The aggregated data is specifically used for furtherment of product development. I'm sure if you looked at the legal T's and C's of any technology company, you'd find the exact same paragraph that says, when you use our product, we aggregate and de-anonymize the information to make a better product. We have no commercial opportunity. We're not a data company. We don't sell data. That's not our business. If you look across the industry, we're the only company that actually has privacy in mind. To your point, Councilwoman, 30 days is tough. The industry standard is perpetuity, which I don't agree with as a civilian. I think that we should find a balance of privacy, which is important, but also safety, right? I have a 2-year-old son. I want him to be safe in the city he lives in. And the tool that we've developed does that. So if you talk to the chief in San Ramon, he will tell you they make multiple arrests every single day with this product. You go to Danville, pretty safe city, generally speaking, pretty sleepy city, a lot of arrests. Go to Milpitas, Atherton, San Mateo, they're gonna tell you the same thing. It's a highly effective product. So from an aggregate perspective, it is not sold, it is not reused, it is simply used to build different models, to build better products. And then from an effectiveness perspective, I think the limitations we put in place are appropriate, right? There has to be a crime. You gotta have a case number. Like something bad has to happen to go in and start looking for something. That's no different than many other cases. I also would say that, you know, the cases that we are predominantly focused on, right, these are non-violent types of crimes. In the case of San Ramon, this was actually just last weekend, they got a hit on a stolen car. And so what that means is a stolen car drove by a camera. It actually pulled into the mall. Within 15 seconds, the nearest officer is notified in their MDT, that's the laptop in the patrol vehicle. They went in, pulled him over, and guess what? It wasn't just a stolen vehicle. There's 3 stolen weapons as well in the vehicle. Like, they were going to the mall to rob the place. So what was originally a nonviolent crime, so a stolen car, you know, no one was hurt, could have led to a pretty violent situation because now you have guns involved. So that type of use case is really prevalent, right? There's about 250,000 cars at any given time that are wanted on the roads. As the chief mentioned, that could be Amber Alerts, that could be missing persons, it could be stolen cars or outstanding warrants. That's a very proactive use case. The reactive use case is, okay, your home was broken into, unfortunately. What cars were nearby? Was there any evidence we could gather? Oh, you might know that there was a red Acura that was in your driveway. Can the detective start to use that to build a case? It's not perfect because you'd only have 30 days of footage, right? There has to be a lot of things that pull together. But when you think about it from a budgetary perspective, the average cost of a fully loaded officer in California is about $200,000 a year. And with $40,000, the chief gets 20 officers that work 24 hours a day. They don't get sick. They don't take days off. They don't have any subjectivity to them. They're just objective tools that sit there. And that's kind of how when we work with cities and whether it's yourselves or other cities, that's how we start to think about how we use technology to drive towards more objective policing that's very evidence focused and not subjective. But I'm not sure if that answers your questions, but I hope that's at least a starting point.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
I don't have any more questions, but I'll have some comments later after we're.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so how about comments? Yes, Vice Mayor Gahani.
Thank you for the report, Chief Avlar. Garrett, thank you for your comments. When looking at the deployment of the cameras, it looks like just, entrance exits in the city. Is that right, Chief Avlar? Okay. So, we're not really looking at, tracking people throughout our city. It's really just coming in and out. I guess my question is, how does the ALPR fit into our overarching strategy for technology? I really, I kind of agree with my fellow council members with regards to having the discussion with the community, and I don't think 3 days of notification is sufficient. It kind of goes back to my comments when it came to housing, City Manager Hall, whether it was ADUs or not having comments on that day, or a topic like this. Where we need to just have the opportunity to engage with the community and answer questions and give them plenty of time to talk about this with us. So I'm going to kind of table those comments for later. But I've got to say, I do support my fellow council members with regards to awareness levels in our community about this. But since we're here and we have, some people on the phone that can help, I'd like to understand how the ALPR strategy fits into our overarching strategy for leveraging technology. I mean, is this just a foray into it? We're going to test it out with this, or do we have an overarching strategy that this fits into?
Are you asking it as far as the police department?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we've been very conservative with what technology we've used or tried to implement. And I think as technology comes along we feel like it will fit our city, then we will. But as you know, we've talked about other technology, robots and things like that, or signs or based on cost and things like that. So I think as we discuss technology, it has to make sense and fit. So
okay. So
there is no like go from this step to this step to this step.
Right. You're kind of considering different elements that could kind of help us better, give us a better chance at fighting crime, is what I'm hearing, and leveraging technology in different ways. You're evaluating that. You're also keeping an eye on privacy. And that's something for us to have a conversation with the community about. But it's definitely in the thought process that this isn't some, slippery slope where all of a sudden we're just going to have a whole bunch of technology throughout the insides of our streets and all that. I mean, I've had conversations with you with regards to, just doing neighborhood watch at a technological level, right? I mean, I was raised on neighborhood watch, right? And we had little stickers outside of our window, like, hey, we all know each other and we're all looking out for each other, and taking that to the next level where there are members of this community that are very open to having cameras pointed out at the street to help us fight crime. So I've heard that side of it as well. But I want to make clear that currently there's no overarching strategy. We're just evaluating. This is a tool that has been used by cities around us successfully. If this item does get tabled, maybe there's an opportunity to come back with some more of those details that were requested by, I think, Councilmember Alasti, with regards to just real figures, like how do we whether ROI, I think, was kind of addressed by Garrett when he said, hey, you've got 20 police officers now that aren't taking a day off and they're helping to help fight crime. But I think there may be some ways to boil up some more facts, like, Garrett had some off the top of his head, that he was highlighting, but maybe there's, an opportunity to bring some of those closer to home and say, hey, this has kind of been a little bit more proven. I didn't, not to introduce competition for Flock, but in this process, I didn't see that. I don't know if we went out, we approached anybody else. Is the Flock, Chief Avalar, is Flock a sole provider of this capability? There's nobody else in the marketplace. Is that why we didn't have an RFP and really go and pursue, other suppliers?
It is a sole source for this type of camera. When I first started looking into this, one intersection was $150,000 for other cameras. So this is,
that makes no sense. Yeah, I guess coming from a technological background, I've been in high tech. That just, to me, is robbing taxpayers of their money. There's no reason for it to be at that price. But
agreed.
Okay. So I guess you kind of did some homework and found these crazy prices, crazy Eddie type prices, and then identified Flock as a provider for this service at such a low level that we didn't have to go out for an RFP or anything like that because of the value that they brought and how they had combined the technology with their hardware with their software and had been a proven model around us. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. For now, those are my questions. Again, I'm not so, I do want to give our community an opportunity to discuss this. And so I think we should table it. I do appreciate the lights going out on Chief Avalar.
Sorry.
But I appreciate the thought process, Chief Avalar, and what you're trying to accomplish. Oh, last question. I did see the 2019 numbers, and I saw that the car break-ins were going up and the crimes involving cars were going up in 2019. What's our trajectory right now in 2020? I know COVID may or may not have slowed things down, but what does it look like right now?
Yeah, it's all over the place. COVID has really kind of made it so that tracking is not. We are experiencing a consistent and ongoing catalytic converter thefts, which is really a tough thing for people because once that is stolen, it's a $2,500 repair to their car. So that was one of our really focusing on trying to find out through when it happens, you get a video from someone's house, but the video shows the car, at 3 a.m. So those are, really good leads if you have a camera. But without it, it doesn't, you don't have anything. So, this is not a slip it to the community type of report. We are really trying to just bring something and help the community. So.
Right. And I don't think, I don't think it's your motive to sneak this by the community. That's not what I'm saying at all, right? However, I think our process of bringing this to the community should require us to notify them of something like this coming up. That's not necessarily on you, it's on communications, it's on us as council, it's on staff. We need to change the process, I think, of how we bring something like this to the community to enable more than just a few days for them to provide input and for us to think about it as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Councilmember Fruman, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that on the notice part of it that has been brought up a few times, it's odd. It's not normal that the state comes out with legislation on a very specific topic that says you need to get community input. And that's the case that's been mentioned to us in this report, that there's legal requirements to get this input. And I would agree with my colleagues that a community meeting, or even better yet, Chief Avalar has talked about recently these neighborhood officers and neighborhood meetings. This would be a perfect topic for them to discuss at that level, and maybe somebody from management to help provide case studies and show how the system works to get buy-in. I empathize with the public and their concern with privacy. The flip side to it is that every one of these license plates or vehicle descriptions that's being captured is in a public location. The only way to maintain your absolute privacy is to never leave home. But I do understand that it's a slope. You start taking little bits and people get concerned, and I'm not taking it lightly. And please don't think that. I think it's important that we hear out the community members, what their concerns are. Chief, this is not so different than the information you heard from your officers when you rolled out body-worn cameras, right? Their concern was, we're going to be wearing cameras and management is going to be sitting in the back office all day long, reviewing all of the camera footage all day long to catch us doing something wrong. And the fact of the matter is there isn't enough time to do those things. And the concern that somebody was mentioning about knowing everywhere that people are going, I think Vice Mayor Gahani hit it very well, is these cameras are at ingress and egress points of the community. All we'll know is if you're leaving or coming into town. We don't know where you're stopping or where you're going. It's an efficient way. I mean, we could put, if we had an ongoing problem, you could put an employee sitting in an unmarked car at an intersection and just snapping photographs of every single car that goes by. Very inefficient, but accomplishes the exact same result. So I believe this is a productive tool. I know from not so much personal experience, but personal information that's been given to me by a local police officer in San Mateo, who has told me about cases where they've got limited information at the scene. They immediately go in and check the cameras in the neighborhood or the area that's around there, because we've got a vehicle color and a make. They look on the camera and they get more information. It just gives them the next step to follow up that lead to try to solve that case. And it does solve cases. Chief Avalar, you gave us, I want to say there were 2 or 3, they were a little bit high level examples within the staff report. I think the public would appreciate more concrete, here's a case, here's something that might happen in Foster City or typically happens here, and how it was solved in another community with very limited information. I think that would be helpful. The return on investment, when you're talking about a financial return on investment, the financial return on investment could very well be the homeowner and homeowners in Foster City, in the sense that if your car is broken into 2 or 3 or 4 times, your insurance rates go up. Your home is burglarized and stuff is taken, your insurance rates go up. if your house isn't getting burglarized and you maintain a clean record over time, typically you get discounts on those insurances. And maybe, I've never heard it because it's never been asked of me, but sometimes when we're doing insurance or updating our insurance, we're asked questions about like the nearest fire station. What types of locks do you have on your home? Maybe someday we'll get to the point where does your community use LPR cameras or something like that? Because that helps reduce crime that might save the insurance company's money, could be passed on to ratepayers. I am, on cost. This was the other thing. When I looked at the cost on this, I know that we had a couple speakers that talked about excessive cost, and I would absolutely disagree. I've worked with ALPRs before, vehicle mounted ALPRs, and you could not outfit one patrol car with an ALPR system for what we'd be paying for 20 cameras covering all of our ingress and egress. It would cost us less, what you're coming forward with. So this is a reasonable cost. I'm very confident in that. The two concerns I have related to approving anything now is community input. I would agree that the community needs more of an opportunity to participate and be convinced, the usefulness of the product. The other thing is, and I can't remember, I think MK brought it up regarding the discussion at budget time. And it was absolutely a truthful statement that we're approving the budget, but we're not necessarily approving the purchase yet. And in the times that we're in right now with COVID and the uncertainty of revenues, it would not be a prudent decision on the part of the council to make a purchase even at this level, even at 31,000, because we know it's 40,000 for out years, without knowing if our revenue projections pan out. For me, I don't know that I would be 100% comfortable until after mid-year budget review, where we've seen some trend with revenues. We'll see how it impacts our property taxes and sales taxes and things like that. That would help me from the financial end. And between now and then, it gives you, Chief, opportunity to roll out that program that I think is really wise about getting out into the community and having those officers interacting with the neighborhoods. And this is a great beginning topic to talk about. So I appreciate it coming forward. I didn't have the same history that Councilmember Hindi had from this being brought up before, but it's going to take some convincing. I'm convinced. I know that these tools work, but the public needs to be convinced because it is a significant intrusion on their privacy. There aren't people driving around taking pictures of their cars right now. So I think that's important. Thank you.
So I think in the interest of time, it sounds like we would like to table this, if I may make a suggestion. Yes, Councilmember Hindi?
Thank you. Before you table it, Madam Mayor, I just feel like I have to kind of interject here a little bit. Thank you so much for allowing me. Just to be clear, Chief Avalar, I was no way suggesting or insinuating that you're trying to slip this through the community. Because what I had mentioned, this happened prior to you being the chief of the police. It was under a different chief of police, was under a different city manager. And when we had those discussions, there's absolutely not. And I think as far as justification of the tool, I could see it. I'm not far off from seeing the value of it and fighting crime. I mean, solving crime. Basically, it's not fighting crime, it's solving the crime by identifying the perpetrator of these crimes as they come in or they leave the city. No question about that. But I think it's what I want to make sure everybody knows. I heard my colleagues comment, and I think there's a lot of valid points. The point is, it doesn't have, we cannot shorten the process of public input, number one. Number two, there's many questions that have to be made. And I think, Mayor, before we bring it back, I know we want to table it, or the consensus seems like to table it, and if that's the decision of the council, that's fine. But I really think we ought to bring back a surveillance ordinance and discuss that in a comprehensive manner. What is acceptable to us? What is acceptable to the community? Because there's always going to be trade-off. When you start putting cameras or you start deploying technologies, you're going to have to give some of your privacy. So what I could probably stomach, somebody else could not. If the overwhelming majority of our community that cannot stomach those trade-offs, we need to know that. And but I could probably close my eyes and tell you most people want you to solve crimes, Chief. Nobody wants to see people breaking into their properties or stealing their catalytic converters or, God forbid, even somebody getting killed or injured, right? So it's not just property. So also it's a deterrence and it's a public safety that it could be used for public safety. And I can't find probably anyone in Foster City who is not for preventing crimes or preventing injury or death to anyone. But I think it has to be done in the proper way, and we need to figure out what that proper way is and what kind of guidelines we as the council we need to put. For example, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really ask the questions because I'm completely opposed to it at this minute. Not the idea, is just how it came to us. But I don't know, is that information when you say a law enforcement, does that mean ICE could access that information? I don't know that. I mean, those discussions and those things need to be defined. They need to be defined by council and by the community. What is acceptable to us? It's such a vague, without a meaningful discussion, such a vague contract at this point. We need to really dive deep into it and, again, talk about our surveillance ordinance in the city. I think there are cities in the Bay Area and in the state and that have done that. We could definitely learn from those folks.
Thank you for those comments. Yeah, I think that if we do table this, we have an opportunity here to involve the residents more in a discussion about this type of technology and surveillance, and see, you know, what the appetite is in the community for this. So with that said, I'm looking for a motion.
Adam.
I move to table this item, and I'm hoping my motion is actually also to bring a discussion to agendize for future time as well, discussion on surveillance ordinance, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do I have a second?
I'll second for discussion purposes for Councilmember Wasti.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a, I wanted to make sure I mentioned this when we come back with this topic again. So we have talked about ROI. Vice Mayor Ghani raised a great point about how this fits in the overarching strategy. I think it would be very important if it's positioned and presented in that manner, along with tangible ROI. And I'm pretty sure we would be able to get the help from the company in doing that, because they do that all the time for sales presentation. I think I'm not talking about the savings that homeowners will have as a result of less crime. I'm talking about from the standpoint of police budget and how we can show concrete, tangible dollar savings as a result of this investment, which should be pretty straightforward, I would assume, to provide. Another item, it's very important for me to mention at this time. I know we didn't, Chief Avalar explained the reason why we didn't go through the RFP process as we don't have viable competitors in this space. However, I think by the time this is presented to the council again, one, there could be some competitors. And secondly, not exactly in the space, but maybe something similar. You may have already looked into that, but I would broaden the scope as we look at competitors so as to get the best possible product. So those would be some of the follow-ups I would expect when this comes back, in addition to public input, when this comes back to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a motion on the table and a second, so we'll take a roll call vote.
Great. Councilmember Awasti?
Yes.
To table. Great. Fruman?
Yes.
Gahani,
Yes.
Hindi,
Yes.
and Mayor Mahampur.
Yes.
This item is tabled with all council members voting to table the item.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Aguilar, and thank you. Next item, please.
Item 10, communications. 10.1, City District warrant of demands were processed and issued on August 31st, 2020, September 4th, 2020, and September 15th, 2020. ACH payment on August 25th, 2020, September 1st, 2020, September 9th, 2020, and September 15th, 2020. This is an information item only, no action required.
Thank you. Next item. I think we want to take item 12. It was mistakenly put on after the council comments and district manager comments.
Right.
So we wanted to take 12 before 11 if there's no objection from the council.
Great.
Okay.
Item 12, reports from council subcommittees. And the first one would be land use, Mahampur and Gahani.
There's no report.
Nope. My understanding is staff will bring strategies for the highest and best use regarding opportunities in our city to the land use committee in 2 weeks and then to council.
Was that right? We'll be meeting with the land use subcommittee in 2 weeks.
Okay. Infrastructure and facilities, Gahani and Fruman.
No update at this time.
Okay. Communications and public engagement, Gahani and Hindi.
No update since August 17th.
Transportation, Gahani and Fruman.
It's my understanding Director Durace will be reaching out to Councilmember Fruman and myself for a meeting this week on Streetlight.
Would now be an appropriate time to mention for that subcommittee. I believe we were both on the Streetlight data did a roadshow on September 29th that we both attended. The information was seemed to be geared toward transportation engineering professionals, but I was able to see some of the capabilities. They use a system to track the evacuation of the city of Paradise during their fires, see the trends and the issues that they were facing. They can tell the difference between vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians, which seems as though it could be helpful. And some of the case study presenters indicated using Streetlight data application in tandem with other vehicle tracking tools to validate the data to make sure that the Streetlight data information was accurate. So it sounds like there's some interesting uses for that as well to look at patterns. And they were looking at a lot of pre-COVID, post-COVID, or pre-COVID and during COVID traffic patterns and activities. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fruman. That's a good update. Yeah, that's good. That's it for transportation.
Okay. Economic development, sustainability, Hindi and Gahani.
We provided an update at the meeting on September 28th.
Okay. Levy, Awasti and Fruman.
We provided an update earlier today.
Okay. City manager performance review, Mahampur and Hindi.
No report.
Long-term strategic planning, Mahampur and Hindi.
No report.
City special events, Awasti and Fruman.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Fruman, for sending like 50 emails today on that. We have made great progress. And what is the date, Dante, that we are aiming for? October 19th.
October 19th.
Yes, and there is a deadline, I believe, early morning tomorrow for the report to be published. We are on track. So, thank you.
Pension liability, Mahampur and Hindi.
No report.
And information exchange, Awasti and Hindi.
No update. Thank you.
And so, Mayor, based on the decision you guys made this evening, you'll see only those subcommittees reflected in the agenda.
Great, thank you.
Good.
Next item, please.
So just a quick question. if I may, Mayor.
Sure, please, go ahead.
So Dante, you'll be providing an updated table of the current subcommittee, or Priscilla or someone, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Okay. City District Manager reports, Council Board statements and requests, and Council Liaison reports.
Yes, Dante, City Manager report.
Yes, Mayor. Only a few. The public and I'm sure the council last week got our messages about the September 28th. The California Department of Public Health issued new guidance about usage of outdoor playgrounds. In line with those recent guidelines, we will be opening up our playgrounds, basketball courts, bathrooms, fitness courts, and skate parks with some restrictions on October 8th. We will be releasing a press release this week, and for details of that, people are encouraged to visit our city website, and it'll have all the details to that. Secondly, just want to announce the Police Department Community Police Academy. We had a good discussion about the police this evening. If people would like to be engaged and learn more about what our police do and kind of the issues that are facing our police department, we want to invite them to actually join us for the virtual Community Police Academy. You can find an application on our website, and people have until November 2nd to apply. And the Academy will begin virtually via Zoom on November 4th. So people who are concerned or would like to have a look into our police department, have issues about transparency or what have you, we'd encourage you to please be involved. And that completes my reports.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Councilmember Hindi. How about you?
You caught me by surprise, but I found the unmute button. Anyways, well, good meeting. I think we had great discussions throughout the evening. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, my colleagues, for those robust discussions, if you will. I just want to remind everyone that November 3rd is election day, but the ballots has dropped. I don't know. I received my ballots already. Probably a lot of people did receive them over the weekend, Saturday. But if you haven't, I'm sure they'll be coming soon. And I hope each and everyone in Foster City exercises their right and vote. We have up and down the ballot. We have presidential election, and we also have city council election, and we have a school bond measure that I think I would love, actually, Madam Mayor, for you perhaps to invite the school district, whether the Board of Trustees or member of the trustees or the superintendent, to come in and talk to us about Measure T and how that would benefit Foster City. I know Vice Mayor Gahani and myself had spoken with the trustees, and from what they had shared with us, there's a lot that could be gained for Foster City, specifically at Bowditch, which we all know it's really waiting for some work to be done. And I've heard some folks were asking, well, they already have some money, they haven't done anything with it. My understanding is the school district will take that money that they already have, in addition to Measure T, combine those two and do something really helpful for our community and our students at Bowditch. So perhaps if we could invite them, they could elaborate in a whole lot better way than I just did.
Maybe we can add that to our future agenda, next agenda, Dante, if it isn't too late.
We can definitely do that.
Thank you.
So that's my brief report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Fruman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to really quickly hit off of what Councilmember Hindi just mentioned about the school tax and the parcel tax that's already out there, where you mentioned that we already gave them money. They haven't done anything for Bowditch yet. The money was allocated. Those jobs go in phases. Familiar with that from before I was on the council. And there's actually some good that can actually come from that delay. If the measure passes in November, then it gives us an opportunity to look at the campus more holistically and make sure that things work well together. If we had just built a couple buildings without thinking about what might come after it, they might not gel together well. So I'm hoping that if the additional money comes to fruition for them, that we'll see a more master planned concept for what's going to happen at Bowditch. The other thing I wanted to mention along the lines of the election, I wanted to mention that I had the opportunity to attend on September 30th. The League of Women Voters and the city clerk hosted a forum for the candidates for city council. For those who are unable to view it live, you can view it in a recorded version that is located on our city's website under the section where the current election information is. There's a link there. It's a nice big picture to hit on if you want to watch that forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wasti.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a really quick update today. I attended the Emergency Services Council meeting on October 1st. There was an update from our fire chief, and it was very inspiring to hear firsthand what they went through in helping us all with the wildfires, and the kind of effort they put in and how well planned and methodical that was. The departments are already thinking about the storm season, which they are expecting to be really bad this year. So there is no relief for them from COVID, which continues to fires, and now storm season. And one of the things I heard was that the first fire this year was in February in San Bruno. So they want to take the learnings from this year's fire season, if you will, to apply to next year's, but they really don't have time because they're still addressing the fires, and February is not too far. So it was good to get firsthand understanding of how much work that involved and how fortunate we are to be supported by such great folks that work in the fire department. I'm very thankful and grateful to them. And that would be my update. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gahani.
No update for today.
Thank you. Mine's very short. I had a fun meeting on Zoom with a Brownie troupe, and the girls were very engaged in the process and had some very interesting questions. So that was one of the things that I enjoy the most is getting together with the community and having these little Zoom meetings. I wish we could do it in person, but fingers crossed that we'll be able to do it very soon in person. It was a very nice thing to be doing in this time of COVID-19 with all the stress. So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So we are going to adjourn and recess into closed session. I'd like to request like a 5-minute break in between here, and then we'll come back into closed session.
Recess into closed session 13.1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, government code 54956.9B, one potential case, and 13.2, public employee appointment, government code 54957, title city manager, continuation of recruitment process.
Thank you. See you in 5. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Public.